highway. I hope Dean doesn't get hit by a bus.
Okay, calling the Timberlane Regional School Budget Committee meeting to order at 6:35. Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Alan David, Eileen Doobie. Here. Lee Doobie, David Gerns.
Here.
Dan Guide.
Here.
Julie Hammond, John Hughes,
Here.
Michael Mascola,
Here.
Sean O'Neill,
Here.
Jim Paul.
Here.
Also seated at the committee table is Business Administrator Jeff Dabb.
Mr. Paul, would you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Next item is to review the minutes from October 26th. We have a problem with the audio. Any corrections or omissions? Yes.
I've already talked to Katerina. I would, under roll call, and put my name, and then made a correction on page 6, elementary school principal, not high school.
Any other corrections or omissions?
Yeah, so under the roll call, it has me as present and not present.
So you're Schrodinger.
Which one would you like to be?
I was not here. That's the only part I can make comment on. Okay. I wasn't here.
Any other corrections or omissions? Is there a motion to accept the minutes as amended?
So moved.
Is there a second? Okay, all in favor? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Are you up?
I'm abstaining.
We're abstaining, okay. 6 in favor, 1 abstention. Okay. Any other correspondence besides what was mailed to folks earlier? Yes,
The non-public minutes as well?
I'm sorry?
The non-public minutes?
We didn't do those yet.
Oh, yeah. Okay, what do we do? How does that manage?
Should you just distribute them?
Is there a motion, or I'll entertain a motion to review the non-public minutes? And,
Thank you.
Motion to accept the non-public minutes.
I have one, same thing. I'm listed as present and non-present.
okay,
As amended.
As amended, yeah. Any other additions or corrections?
Your name's not in here?
It's probably the same.
Same, she probably copied it.
Okay.
We're fine.
Well, there's a motion on the floor to accept the
Can we,
minutes.
can we slow down here for a second, because
Sorry, sure.
there are some other changes in here. It's just, we know that John wasn't here, and he's actually taken some, in the polling on these. On the second part, on page 2,
Oh,
he voted yes.
okay.
The other point I'd also like to bring on up here, we do have a motion on here, and I'd like to read it. It says, "A motion to seal the minutes of non-public session indefinitely based on concerns." I just want to tell you, as like, from my viewpoint, you cannot encumber a future board. So these non-public minutes, even though they're sealed, that a future board can take the opportunity to look at those via a motion in a board meeting and unseal those minutes if they choose to desire. You cannot encumber a board in the future. So I would think that that's verbiage should be struck from there, but I know the motion was made that evening, and I just was looking at something else and I couldn't catch it at that time, or I would have made the statement at that time.
Should,
That was the motion that was made on there, and it did pass, so it is part to reflect that, but I'd like to actually have our minutes for tonight's meeting to reflect my concern about that, to be part of the record. That's it. Thank you.
any other discussion? Wanna call a roll on voting on this? Did we just do by show
No,
of
you just
hands?
vote, same thing.
Okay, all in favor of accepting the minutes as amended? Eight in favor, opposed, abstentions, one abstention. Now, correspondence.
You can pass it around.
Oh, yeah, here we go.
No, I don't have it.
I saw it.
I didn't
Yeah,
get it.
you can't even hand it to her.
Is there any additional correspondence besides the email that's being distributed now, or redistributed now? Yes.
I do have a question, and I know that we talked about this at the end of our broadcast last meeting. It was
Yes.
about this correspondence folder, because it was agreed upon between you and I that these emails were going to be forwarded to the entire board.
Yes.
Because what happened last week is that folder came down, it sort of never made its way. We got done with this meeting, we adjourned, and it was down here and never got to be discussed. So it was agreed upon that we would be forwarding all emails that come into the board, and you were gonna be then turning around and passing them, forward to the
Right.
rest of the committee.
Yes.
So I just wanted to make that part of the record as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was concerned, did you get it? Because we mailed this,
No, I did not, I did not get anything this week.
Jeff.
Okay, if that's the case, then I'll take that offline with Jeff and then we'll get that corrected, but I did not see this.
Let me just back up. I don't believe I received an email specifically with the correspondences either.
No, I did I.
All right, so you're not alone.
This mail that went around was.
So what's in the correspondence folder?
was
I did not receive an email specifically with that information in there. So that's the first time I saw it. That's from me.
I'm showing it went to Lee, John, Sean, Eileen, David Gerns, Alan David, Michael Mascola.
Yeah, it does say it here, up in here, there is that, but it just has my name, it doesn't have my email address on here, so I don't know what that
That's mail.rit, and I'm not sure if that's the
It
one.
says Sean_O'Neill, mail, rit.edu.
Yeah, that will work too, but I will, I don't remember seeing this, so I will look for this again.
I got underscore@gmail.
Yeah, when did it come out?
The day, November 3rd at 4 o'clock.
Since I come back at work, they always.
So
Okay.
as far as, I mean, I can look at it, it looks like everybody got it.
Yes.
All right, but we'll take that offline then. I just wanted to make it sure that we agreed to this, and that because
Absolutely.
it was after our meeting and as the folder was down here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everybody seen this, so that
Yes.
I could retire it over here? Okay.
Yeah, we all agreed to it, and I wanted to make a point that everybody got it. I asked Jeff to distribute it for me because I was jammed up in the middle of something and I couldn't do it myself.
Okay, no, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page then.
I hope I haven't ended up in anyone's junk or clutter folder, my goodness.
Okay. Are there any delegations or individuals to speak to us tonight? All right, let's move on to new business with a presentation from the principal of the middle school.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for allowing me to come and speak with you all. My name is Mike Flynn. For those of you that I have not met, I'm the new principal at Timberlane Regional Middle School. So this is my first rodeo here. So if you can bear with me in anything, just ask me at any point what's going on. So in preparing the budget this year, I'd just like to speak to some of the drivers and justify, why it's on there. And then from there, we can have a discussion if you like. So, are we gonna start on this sheet? Is that right? You guys have this one in front of you?
Please.
Okay, great. Starting with the first one of the increase of the 15,000 is from the NEASC self-study. So Timberlane Regional Middle School's NEASC accreditation is gonna expire here. And we need to, we have begun, and we're gonna continue to start with the self-study. So,
Quick
Yeah.
question.
yeah,
For those of us who aren't familiar with jargon, could you explain what?
absolutely. So, this one is actually new for me. Do you know the jargon, Mr. Woodward? What NEAS stands for? New England Accreditation School.
Yada, yada, yada.
Yeah, something like that.
Council.
New
Yeah.
England,
Whatever.
New England Association of Schools and Colleges.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so this is a nationwide accreditation process that schools
Okay.
go through to verify that we're doing a good job. So, the part of that cost is for the group, the outside group that comes in and visits our schools, visits our classrooms, goes over all of our curriculum, all that stuff. So it's the cost for lodging, the stipends. Our teachers ourselves within the building have to write a report, a reflection on ourselves and what we're doing internally. And then it's also the actual fee for the accreditation, so that's the total cost there. Okay. Going down a line, to the increase for the 7th and 8th grade math, pre-algebra, algebra, and accelerated math. The SAU had been covering this cost because it was the implementation process, and now that cost has been moved down to the building level. And that cost will cover the consumables. So if you're not aware of what a consumable is, it's the stuff, the math books that are good for a year. Students work within them. And it also covers the online access fee for grades 7 and 8. So it covers the cost of the consumables, the workbooks, and the online access for the students in pre-al and algebra. Okay? All right. The next line. Oh, am I going too fast? Slow down?
Well, I'm just confused. It says, if I'm looking at it correctly, it shows 15,000 difference. You're asking, and it says 14 here, so.
That's the NEASC, and then going on to 14 is on
52.
Yeah,
Okay.
page 7.
page 7. Yep.
Thank you.
right? The next line is actually something that's pretty exciting that's happening in our building this year is, we have the opportunity, we're bringing the Museum of Science to us for sixth grade. We found that getting on buses at 9 o'clock, traveling to Boston, eating lunch, only having about an hour of experience was becoming a problem. So we reached out to them to see if they did in-house field trips. So they do travel up. So since last year, if there's anything that happens within the PAC, we've been asked to budget for that, for the students. So that's where you'll see that line increase there.
So this improves the exposure to the children.
Yeah, they get a full, they show up at our building, I believe it's 8:30 this year, and they'll be there for nearly 5 hours with the experience. So that 1,800 would include the cost for them to come and the materials that need to be used at that time.
What's the difference between that and what you paid to go to Boston?
I think it was about, with buses, it typically runs us about $23 a student if we were going down there.
And how many students about?
This year's 275.
I'm sorry?
275.
Okay.
So that line would not have, I'm trying to find it. 1 second.
Well, this is 1,800 is the extra, is the
Correct, and it was,
slightly additional cost.
yeah, and we, in reviewing it, we took some money away from the science, so we decreased in areas, but this area would increase.
But we get more for our money.
Correct, yeah, and it's a better experience for the kids. It's kind of like the World Tales in 7th grade, we've been doing that for a while. They come to the PAC, the 7th grade students spend the time there, so we explored the opportunity for someone to come to us rather than going out. It just makes for a much easier experience for the students. Okay. We are now on to the increase of $4,038.
Is this the top column on the?
This is the top column, yes.
Okay, once again, can you explain the verbiage on the?
Yeah, so it's an online resource supplement for our science area, for our vocabulary. So we were seeing that we've had a lot of resources in reading and mathematics, but in order to have successful readers, you really need to build down in vocabulary. So this would be an online resource that's gonna supplement the textbooks as we have been using. So it's gonna be more up to date, more interactive, and as we are moving towards dedicated devices, this would be much more beneficial for the students that are gonna have the Chromebooks in their hands. Okay, so, moving forward, the 2 AED units along with flexible seating. For those of you that did the building tours, I spoke about flexible seating, and I'll speak about that a little bit more in a minute, but we only have at the middle school 1 AED machine, and it's located at the front entrance of the building. And during our safety committee work, we've been trying to get a sponsor to donate them. The high school's been fortunate enough to have some donations. We have been unable to solicit any type of donation for an AED machine. It's been 1.5 years now. So I'm looking to put an AED machine in the back of the building, and as well as a mobile AED machine for our phys ed department. Our phys ed classes that are out on the fields, and if you can imagine something happening at that time, running all the way back to the beginning of the building, then running all the way back to the incident that's occurring. So that was that request. The flexible seating, I did bring, for those of you that did not make the building tours, I brought anything that you would wanna see. I showed you the desks, the multiple, tiered desks. I know as we move down forward to the next one, it's quite a bit I'm asking for, and I understand completely. It's, as I was experiencing that night, it's just really changed the tone of our building with these students in these classrooms and having the ability to choose their seating, and not come in and sit down in rows. So you'll see that some of these lines have flexible seating within it, and then it's just the way we were able to incorporate it. I went today, and I'm just gonna pass these around. It's one of the classrooms, in regards to the flexible seating, so that you can get an idea if you weren't there that evening. The students drew pictures of their faces so that there was no faces on there. You'll see they were pretty creative. It's hard to come to the community, to the budget committee and ask for this amount. But as we are in our facility and we are limited in those areas, we have seen growth with the flexible seating and how it's changed a classroom in itself. So if you had questions in regards to that, I have the high top tables, I have the risers, I have the floor seating. That's really the justification in those areas. And the reason why I wanted to hit it when you first saw flexible seating, because I didn't want you to think that I was trying to nab at it in different areas. It was just the way the tables had fallen within the line items, if that makes sense. The other thing you'll see in there is the cafeteria tables. Our cafeteria tables are close to 11, 12 years old. Students sit on them, the benches fall apart, we order the parts, they come back in, they fall apart again. We purchased 2 this year, and I'm asking to replace 7 more. So it's the main congregational area, it's where everything flows through, and lunch starts at 11 and ends at 12:30. We have 800 students come through that area, just looking for some more sturdy furniture. I know I threw a lot at you there real quick about furniture, so is there any question about that?
I have one.
Yeah.
I think Mrs. Doobie mentioned during the tour, these flexible seating pieces of furniture
Mhm.
that you're looking to get in the middle school because it'll enhance the learning experience.
Sure.
I think the question was asked, so what happens in the high school? Is that same experience going to be carried forward there?
I can just address it quickly. We're getting requests from teachers on that. We didn't really gone that direction yet. It is a trend in education to help with different types of learners and basically adjust to ergonomic issues, a variety of benefits for students and teachers in the way they work. You'll see a lot of secretaries with stand-up units now, starting to spring up around the district as that becomes something that helps them to work more efficiently, more effectively, and more healthily. So it's a variety of things in terms of student choice and some of the benefits of personalization of learning, seating, and the arrangements of rooms and creative pieces like this are becoming the trend.
Yes, I just want to make sure that one school says yes and the other school doesn't have a different opinion, and then there's
No,
nothing to it.
it's actually, that's a great question. In the elementary, we've I know it sounds, I don't have proof, we've just seen a change in the learning. We have. If you were to walk through Miss Brady's class that I took a picture there today, at that time, there wasn't one person staring at butterflies. They were all engaged, they were staring, and they were doing their work. And to know the number, you see that there's 180 shaped desks, high top tables, high stools. That in my brain when I was sitting down is I came up with a plan that furniture's an investment, right? We all do it at home. It's not something that's consumable. So that would allow me to have a great impact in a single year. Right now, we currently have 4 classrooms in our building that have flexible furniture. This would allow us to double that. And that would ensure, we have 9 teams in the middle school, that would ensure at least 2 classrooms per team would have the flexible furniture. So, yes.
So what you're trying to say is you're trying to maximize individual learning for
Oh,
each
yeah.
student.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's, not to equate our school to Fortune 500 companies, but if you were to go to these offices, let's use Google or Facebook or, the hot trends, you can see all the furniture that allows adults to be more efficient. And we're seeing that now with our students. We're seeing that ability of a student who, we have itchy 6th graders, right? So they have standing desks with swing bars and they can swing their feet the whole time. We also have really tall 8th graders. And so they have the high top tables that allow their legs to sit and stretch. So that's some of the stuff we're seeing. Yeah.
So just coming back to the question that was raised before, so in the capital planning, basically I don't know if it falls under the capital plan or not, but high school sounds like you're starting to dip your toes into it, but I'm wondering how we're capturing this as a plan to facilitate if it's, because I can only imagine it's like falling off a cliff if you're, you're
Yeah.
doing it in middle school, but, maybe you find 1 or 2 in high school.
Yeah, and that's, we're gonna start sharing. We've actually found ways around it. The dorm risers, we've been trying those out, dorm risers that can raise the tables. It's, as Mr. Woodworth said, it's something, I only have 4 classrooms right now, right? So that's the first year we've really dug in to see if this is gonna work, and we're seeing the successes. So I can only envision that the plan would be to,
We'll be looking at which populations are most likely going to take advantage of this in a way that we feel comfortable in equity and being able to do something well. For instance, if I have, in my special ed department, 3 or 4 groups that this really is ideal for, I might start there, basically grow it through experience to see what's effective, what isn't, with what populations, and it's not like I'm going to go wholesale into something like this. But we're open to it, and we're going to learn from what we see going on.
yeah, we have targeted the classrooms. So we have an 8th grade language arts class, a 7th grade language arts class, a 6th grade social studies class. We really did target to see what's going on. Science with labs, you're not gonna have bean bags and high top chairs, you know what I mean? So it is some targeted stuff, but these, I'll leave these for you when I leave, but some of these risers, it's created, we have that open lounge in 7th grade that you saw, so it's just, I know it sounds cheesy, but we've just seen a difference. We've seen a difference.
I believe that there's a difference. My concern is really one of, I don't unsupport, it's not that I
Yeah.
don't support it, I'm saying, I just don't wanna see us head down one path.
Sure.
And then the kids who have been doing very well in that flexible environment now are unable to adapt because we haven't put in place a plan that allows us to provide them that opportunity.
Yeah.
So, it's the left hand knowing what the right hand is doing.
Right. And I do need to look at the application of it over time, so it's not just a one-time deal, big expense.
And
then,
financially, that
yeah.
we've got it planned.
Will this address the entire school? Are you doing all the rooms?
It'd be a 3-year process, if this is the chunk we wanted to go at. And that's why I approach it this way. It can be less, and it could be more.
Because that's where I was sort of looking at, is that, so you're to expand on your part. Was a plan showing how this is gonna roll out over time?
Yeah.
Because, I look at this and that budget, it's a 33% increase.
I get it.
And I look at that, all these things could be the best noble causes, we all agree to it, but, at the end of the day, we already just got our tax bills, and we already
Yeah.
know how that affected us.
And I get it.
No, and I'm not,
Yeah.
you're bringing us this information, and we all gotta try to figure this out together.
Yeah, and it is the plan. The plan would be over a 3-year period to have cafeteria tables and have flexible seating. And as you said, it doesn't work for everybody. And I also get, believe me, I get the tax bill. I get it.
Mhm.
This was my, you know, I'm not gonna, I'll say I'll play the new principal card here. This is a vision, I'm coming in, I'm sitting down, and I'm looking at something from a different lens, and this is that I can see another shift. I can see this helping us take another shift. So, I'm
One of
being,
the advantages that you do have is that it's, as you're rolling it out, you can be a wave aspect of it, whereas as a, you know, the sixth graders, you know, are experiencing it, the seventh, and then the eighth, and then they roll off into the ninth grade at the high school. And that's when it's just start to be implemented
yeah.
up in that level, where you can look at it as a rollout period.
Yeah.
It's just different, you know, ways of looking at it.
A lot of the trends in education are, you know, to have flexible seating, to take what's been a very traditional desk rows type of approach to things and make things better for collaboration, for group activities, for project work, things like that. So you really have to look, where do you have the ideal space to make that happen with the furniture? It's not just, you don't throw furniture into a room where you have no space, it would be a waste. So you have to really think about the whole plan and the vision, capital improvement plan, you know, at strategic planning. Take a look at, you know, where are we going? What is this school going to be over time, and how do we get there? So being strategic about it is very important. And so so we've talked about it in things like our studies classes, where we'll have 40 kids in a classroom. And you know, it's great to have this type of furniture as we use and move them around into the halls and whatnot to get work done, because it's hard to do the kind of work we want to in the spaces that we have. Timing the purchase of something like this to match up with the changing of spaces that would be ideal for that makes some sense, you know, for us. So we're looking at it and trying to think about it in terms of how would you get there? What would that look like? And we're not fully, you know, we haven't achieved that fully.
One of the things that I would like to recommend to you is that, looking at the come in June timeframe, I would approach the school board and look at them, because they have the direction that they can turn around and reallocate money and stuff, and they might be able to not give you a bunch of it.
Yeah.
They can give you a little bit, but
Yeah.
a little bit is better than nothing.
Absolutely. And, you know, we're still gonna do our job, and we're gonna do our job well. And this would, again, as I sat down in the chair this summer, something new. This was just a new thought of mine, as I've seen some successes as I was working in 8th grade, so I came to you guys hoping, so, thank you.
I had one last question on the same topic. It's a 3-year plan. Is this number for the first year, and then it gets repeated for the second?
So you would see the 55 number, that would be the same number. You would see some decreases in the other lines. So the AED line, there would be a decrease. And then, there was one other one. The cafeteria table, you'd see a decrease in that. 'Cause we wouldn't, I'm asking for 7 total for next year. The following year would only be 3, and then the next year would be 2.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I am gonna leave these for you, just so you can have a better idea, and if you wanna look at them, take a peek. But it gives you an idea, if you weren't at the building tour. And you guys can pass those around at your will.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion to take this budget presentation under advisement. Move. Is there a second? Any discussion? Yes.
Mr. Dowd,
Yes.
the amounts that we're talking about, the furniture and so forth, would that be something in the future we want to bring forward CIP? Or not?
I would think that normally this would be a CIP-related item, and it's interesting you raised that question. I was going to address that in the presentation, where it is Principal Flynn's first year in.
He's forgiven.
Yes. I do expect requests like this would be coming in the future with a plan and a rollout and that sort of thing, so.
Thank you.
Any other questions or concerns? Move the questions, all in favor of accepting this budget as presented under advisement? Please raise your hand. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Unanimous?
Unanimous. opposed, 0. Abstention, 0. Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening. Thank you.
Thanks for your presentation. Now, this guy doesn't get a free pass.
But I'm bringing some reinforcements with me. I've worked with Heather Roy on this, and last year's I've been bringing Brian O'Connell with me, and I like having some people that are smarter than me with me to help me when I struggle. So I also brought Mark, and Mark can answer some of the questions related to STEM that may come up. We just want to make sure we have our answers for you as best we can. We started, we looked at, we're looking at 1,127 students next year, down, from 1,161 this year. We have a total budget, current year budget of $699,115, and a proposed budget of $686,643. So it's a decrease of $8,472 that we're presenting this year. You'll see in areas, for instance, books, fluctuation. When we take care of a department one year, the next year, they're usually gonna come down. Another department that was down that year might come up the following year. So you're seeing some of those fluctuations. As we look at the numbers I've shown you, you'll see in parentheses where we're down. For instance, in books for business and social studies, that's because we've been updating those. Where you go down further and you look at science, and we're trying to replace books that are no longer current, not necessarily accurate anymore with the present thinking, present instructional directions that they offer us. So you can, if you want to look at the first additional one, it's in science, and you'll see that in the page 23 of the
Stop for a
budget.
second. We don't have a cover sheet.
Yeah. So,
I was just gonna ask.
All that, I apologize for, I thought that
You
came.
didn't know.
So that was an additional, if you check your pile, I did hand out a copy to everyone that was in a revised.
That was athletics and music.
Right.
Thank you.
Does it make sense for us to run off more copies?
that would be
Does
great.
it? I
That'd be
will,
awesome, so we could follow.
Yeah, I only got,
Those are-
You want me to run up, Tom?
Well, I think that,
Is it a copy machine?
No, I'll print them off upstairs.
well, if you just run copies, we have 3, 6,
15 is
9,
fine.
12.
Thanks, Ken. A little quicker.
We have the spreadsheet, but we don't have the cover sheet.
Sorry about that, that's my bad. You already had the high school athletic might actually be redundant. And at least to get it out, that was what ended up in the packets, I guess, so.
I can talk a little bit, just some generalities, while you get that, which has specific increases and decreases, but by object code in certain areas, you can get a picture. We're really not fluctuating much in any particular area. The biggest changes are decreases. The largest increases in the object code areas would be supplies, which is about 13,743 more. And in miscellaneous expenses that really talk about, events and, trying to make sure we're taking care of students and funding every type of activity that might go on at the school that doesn't cleanly fit into a budget area. You have new security gate in the library, which we'll show you on that form, which is a single one expense, a one-year expense that every 10 years or so, you need to update that equipment. We're there. So we're asking for that. Everything else is pretty small, small changes that may or may not, need much explanation. We're pretty close to getting that paperwork. There you go, David. Okay, so as you take a look at it, you can see the first two areas there are decreases in books, social studies and business. And then science, you'll see that basically we're looking at accelerated physics books that are fairly expensive books. Yeah, but, so it's a pretty hefty total. But that's what's out there. These are books that are current, have ability to be used with online resources and whatnot. And it helps us to make sure that the kids are getting the best, most current information. Also seeing, excuse me?
I was gonna say, it says they're 11 years old. Is that typically what's the longevity that you plan for?
Yeah.
We typically start looking at books every 5 years, every 5 to 7. We start looking at, what's the next book that we want to look at, or, is it time to renew? Is it time to get the next edition? Look for a new textbook. These, we've been cycling through books. We've been trying to do it in a systematic approach, so, we're not hitting all the books all at once. It's just, it was sort of the time was right for physics. The physics books that we're using, yes, they are 11 years old, but we typically try to at least look at the books earlier than that to make that decision. And it was just, we felt as though we weren't asking for any, at least in science, we weren't asking for any other book. So we felt as though now was the right time to ask for new physics books and not let those go, any longer in that regard. For AP wise, those books have to be sort of updated, or at least the newest version, probably every 3 to 5 years sometimes in some areas. So 11 years is definitely a while for a textbook.
I think in the science, technology fields especially.
Yeah, I mean, with things changing, especially in the world of physics, there's some level of physics that are completely different now.
The library piece is the next one up there. That's a replacement equipment piece for making sure that we're keeping track of what goes in and out of the library. So every book is going to set off an alarm if it's going out, hasn't been checked out. And we are very successful in keeping our inventory, keeping counting of every single book. So we want to make sure we have that system working. We asked for this last year. It didn't get through. We'll continue to put that out there because we don't want to be spending more on repairs for something that over time won't be.
Is this a security system or something?
Yes.
You can see that gate when you
Yeah,
walk
that
in.
wood gate?
Yeah, well, it's not wooden, it's,
Got it.
yeah.
Sorry.
You know what it is.
So that's what that is. You'll see an increase in student activities. We have, a great co-curricular system. We have a lot of clubs and activities, and this becomes the lifeblood of the school. Kids are involved in clubs that travel, clubs that host, clubs that need equipment, clubs that are needing entry fees to things. So we try to balance out the money we have but we don't want to limit the kids. So when we don't have enough, we end up coming to the board for looking for extra money, or trying to do some fundraising or try to take money that isn't being expended somewhere else and move it. We'd rather budget for it at the amount that we're going to end up spending anyway. So that's what you're going to see increases there for. I think I skipped by something for you.
Shades.
The shades. Same cost, $10,000 to continue to replace shades so that we have effectively well lit but also well shaded rooms depending on the need that are operational. So we had let that go over a number of years, and we're trying to catch up with that and make sure that every room's in good shape. I think we saw some of those in the tour. We have decrease in information access fees, basically because we're not going to be using certain databases anymore, so that's an advantage this year. And then as far as supplies for business, we're down a bit, basically because we spent a good amount of money there last year, and we're still benefiting from that expenditure. So now we're looking at art, and you know, art, we've had a tremendous explosion, I think, in the popularity of the pottery class in particular, where we have, at one time, we only had 20, 30 kids taking pottery. We have over 100 now. So when you see that type of increase, you're using more materials, more equipment, whatnot. So in this case, you're seeing that as the major justification for that increase of almost $5,000. So those are the major movers. There's program things that you could look at in here and have questions about. And if it's a STEM question, you can ask Mark. He'd be able to tell you about it. Some people have had questions, for instance, about Project Lead the Way, what that is, and the expenses there. It's not that that's changed a lot, but it is a continuous expense that might need some explanation. Mark can talk to that. And if you have any particular things you'd like me to research for you, get back to me when you can.
I do have one in here. I'm seeing a couple things for kneecap with dollar signs next to them. I thought we moved to different programs.
We still have that in science.
Science kneecap testing.
Okay.
Every year they tell us it's going away, but yet we still have it every year, so we're continuing to budget.
No, I
Yeah.
thought it was all out, so that's why
Yeah,
I saw
just the
it.
science kneecap in the spring for
Okay.
students.
Yes.
So you may have already said this and I missed it, but the stipends, you said at the very bottom of the summary sheet says increase in stipends 13,000.
We, in order to pay all the stipends, we've had to move money around. And so come the end of the year, where we have things that are then unexpended, we've tried to dip into that to make it work. And that, we just don't think that's.
Stipends for writing curriculum and things like that, or?
It could be stipends for clubs and activities, you know, things along those lines.
Okay, so
But, you know, anything that isn't a salaried piece that we pay somebody to do, to take care of a program or kids or whatever.
So this is money we're spending now, we're just accounting for it?
Right,
or-
we're trying to accurately let you know what it's costing us and covering it in one area so that we don't have to have change orders all the time for Mark, for Jeff to
Gotcha.
contend with, moving things around and trying to make it work.
Okay, thank you.
And students always start new clubs and organizations throughout the year. This year, there was already 3 new clubs, and they're looking for advisors, and we do always have volunteer advisors, but it's nice to be able to pay just a little. I mean, our stipends are like $200 for a whole year. I mean, they're not big money, which it would be nice to increase that too, but just to be able to pay, you know, the teachers for their extra time and their travel with students.
We probably pay many coaches and people who do these stipends $5-6 an hour. It's sinful. Over the course of a year, when they're putting in 20 hours some weeks and whatnot, and they're only getting a few $100s, so we have to try to make it somewhat. I mean, they're doing this for other reasons than just the money, but we don't want to insult them either. So we want to make sure we're fair.
Any other questions?
We have one other thing that we'd like to bring up. This is really, as we look at other expenses related to the high school coming up in the CIP, you'll see that there's going to be work done in science rooms on cabinets and stations. That's not reflected in this budget, but we wanted to make sure, especially with Mark here, if you had any questions about that, if you weren't on the tour or whatnot, he could talk to how that's changing our ability to work well in the science rooms. And then also, we have a wall system replacement of courtyard windows. It's a multi-year plan that we're trying to achieve. And you're gonna see $134,000 in expenditures over time for that. So these are significant cost savers in terms of heat and whatnot, but they show up as an expense right now, and it's one of those things, when you look at the CIP, they're trying to balance, you know, what we're gonna have and what we're gonna create and what we need to do to maintain the building. And it's a tricky business, because if we were going to do a construction piece, and you don't wanna be putting $134,000 into something that's not gonna be there. But we're trying to look at, we're losing money each year out of these inefficient rooms and inefficient windows, and it doesn't take long, you know, for that to, you know, be crazy that you didn't act on it. So we've been been planning to do this for a while.
Any questions? Yes.
So these numbers you just mentioned, they're not in this budget here?
They're not in this budget here,
they're in
but
the
they're high
CIP.
school pieces that I want to make sure you heard from us a little bit about it when they come to you again through the CIP.
Get rid of the aluminum that allows all of the wonderful chilliness come in, and then you touch it and you get frostbite. So replace that would be nice.
Yeah, and not just that, those windows leak, and there we have equipment and things that get impacted by that.
Damage.
It's stuff, we've had pictures some years we've sent to illustrate just how silly it is, was we're taking rags and stuff and lining them up around the windows to keep the water from, running into computers and whatnot.
I have one question related to your CIP. You've requested a construction of administrative office and conference room in one of the courtyards.
In the past, we have,
Sorry?
That's not for this year, though.
It's not for this year.
That was agreed upon at the CIP meetings last year to take that up for this year, but early on this year, it was mistakenly put forward, and that's been corrected. So that's no longer, that's a next year conversation. We could talk to that.
Yeah.
In terms of the efficiency of how we work, the types of things we're trying to achieve over time there. I'm not sure that's a this year conversation.
Okay.
And if I could address that?
Yeah.
That's okay. So we did issue a final CIP plan, and for those requests were, and that was, we discovered subsequent to issuance of the plan that had been previously removed from the CIP, so you're absolutely correct. And I'll talk to the committee later about our plan, but that's how that ended up on there. And since it was on that final plan, everyone's under the understanding to be removed. However, I didn't want to change the CIP once it had been issued in final form. We can do whatever we want with it, but
Yeah, we could talk to it.
no, because it'll be next year
Yeah,
item.
that's why I
but-
didn't include it on this, because we decided to move it out a year, so.
That we were looking at, so much was unresolved in terms of the strategic planning process that we didn't want to make a mistake by going in that direction and then going in another direction and wasting money.
Doesn't obviate the need for it, it's just see what the plan comes up with.
Yeah, there's some things that need to be addressed. We're hoping that that becomes something that's prioritized and planned out over time with the completion of the strategic planning process and then readdressing it through the CIP.
Any other questions? I'll entertain a motion to accept this budget as take this budget under advisement.
So moved.
Second?
Second. Thank you.
All in favor? Opposed?
Unanimous?
I'm sorry,
Abstention?
I'm in favor, I'm sorry.
You're in favor, okay.
Unanimous.
Right,
Thank
I
you.
guess that's unanimous.
you.
Sorry about that.
All right. The next, music. Mr. D, you're up.
All right. Good evening.
Good evening.
Music budget. All right. So you've got the summary in front of you, and that seems to be the place tonight where to good place to start. I don't have any great huge drivers. Our budget has been pretty stable over the last couple of years, and I'd like to keep it that way. The one line item that does jump out for us, I don't have the big numbers that everybody else will, but will be the $1,050, and that is for dues and assessments. The district pays for our students to participate in regional and statewide music festivals. This happens throughout the year, and it's covered. It covers about 7 or 8 different festivals. We've had to shift some money in order to make that happen. So we're trying to reflect it more accurately and putting it in the right line item, which is why you see an increase of $1,000. And again, it pays for student registration fees, and all state it pays for student registration fees, to guitar festivals and choral festivals and jazz band festivals and anything that our students participate through the school. The next two are decreases. We were asked to do that, so there's a decrease of $300 in new equipment. There's a decrease of there's an increase of $748. We've had an ongoing replenishment and replacement process for our uniforms. We have about 600 uniforms that we maintain, both marching band uniforms and concert uniforms for every student in the high school. And periodically, every 3 years, we kind of assess what we need, and we make some adjustments, and we've asked to replace some that have seen their life, but we're doing pretty well with that. So that's the increase of $748. The next one is repair, and that's a decrease of $390. The repair is for instruments throughout the district. So that's pretty straightforward. Any questions on the budget summary as far as there's no huge increases and 2 out of 4 of them are decreases, just trying to accurately reflect and make sure everything comes out of the correct line item. Do you want me to go through every line item? Do you want me to take questions? You don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. Angelo would love for me to do that because he's waiting with bated breath to come next. But I've got no major increases. I've talked about that. The only next one would be a $748 in replacement equipment. Again, that's for the uniforms. Right now we have what's it called? An inventory of about I did the math while I was waiting. About $400,000 worth of uniforms. So we've chosen as a district to keep them up periodically. We do a lot of repair, and that comes out of our repair budget, obviously, and it's not just instruments. But we do replacements for those that have seen their life come to an end, and what we're doing is really working. We're not having to spend the six-figure, going out for a warrant article of getting them replaced. So we replace them a little bit at a time. I've done it on a 3-year cycle. It's working. We're able to repair and replace, and also not only that, but to get those sizes that we're not able to deal with properly. The real big kids and the real little kids. So that's what that's about. We kind of do that assessment. We're in good shape with that. We just need to replace some. I'm doing this for the ends of the spectrum. Real little kids and the kids who are
Somebody
really
might take offense to that.
big little, yeah. Anyway, no, Mr. Paul, that wouldn't be a problem.
Mr. D, I got a question.
Yes, sir.
How's the participation been over the last 4 or 5 years? Has it been steady or has it had fluctuated?
No, it hasn't been steady. It's really been increasing. We've been really fortunate, although the student enrollment for the entire district has been slowly getting smaller, our enrollment has been going up. And again, just as a point of reference, we serve in grades K through 8 every student in the district, and our participation rate, the number of kids we serve K through 8 is really over 120%. And how can we do that? We do that because they have general classroom music, but yet then again they go to orchestra, they go to band, they go to chorus. So some kids we see twice K through 8. So it's over 100% of those students, and that's what this budget supports. In the middle school, we see 100% of the students, and that percentage is just at 100%. You're either in general music or you're in band, chorus, or orchestra. And in the high school, out of the 1,100 students, what's the official enrollment today, Mr. Wood? 1161? We have about 420 students out of, and that's an elective, that's different. Every student K through 8 needs some form of music. Every student 9 through 12 is not the case. So we have around 420 some odd. That's pretty good. Everyone touts that if you have 10%, that's great. Well, we can all do the math. It's a lot more than 10%. It's close. It's over 30, almost 40%, right? But it's pretty good, and we're really pleased with that. Our enrollment has been going up. We're fortunate this year. We didn't see any diminution at all with the new implementation of the new block 9 through 12. We've had no problem with that as far as students not being able to get classes. So that's gone really well.
That was my next question.
Yeah,
how the new schedule has affected, and you're telling me it's increased, so it hasn't had a negative effect.
yeah, it hasn't had a negative effect. It hasn't, no, not at all.
Okay, great.
Except on my lunch. I don't go to lunch like I used to. I don't like that. You gotta fix that. Yes.
Can you just take a moment and speak to the CIP request for the external?
That's something I should be looking at, or?
Well, we have a 70,000 for this upcoming budget for the outside wall.
So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So where we have had facilities come and speak to those items that are on CIP, we typically will have the budget owner speak to it from a need perspective.
Yeah.
And so this is more of a facilities issue. This is really just dealing with the cladding and the siding on the building.
I just thought that he may have a comment or two. It wasn't for very much more than that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, nothing in depth. I just thought where you're here, it might
Sure.
make
Yeah,
sense.
you know, I can certainly speak to that. It's something, it's an issue that's near and dear to my heart because we need to address that. The interior of the building is really quite well maintained, really no problems, the occasional leak, you know, but nothing to write home about. The exterior of the PAC is literally disintegrating before our eyes, and it really needs to be addressed. I've been trying to push that for the last 3 or 4 years, and now it's really getting bad fast. And the last windstorm we had, or whatever, however you want to categorize the storm we had, the Sunday that we lost power, you know, we lost a couple of panels right off of the exterior panels, so now and they're fixing it, but that was a unnecessary thing to do when the building was being built. It was supposed to be the whole building was supposed to be masonry, but it was a cost-cutting save. They diminished that, just did the front and a little bit around the sides, and they put the cementitious board, the 4x8 cementitious board all the way around it, and it saved money, but now we're gonna pay for that, so it's a problem.
It was
It
also-
really is a problem.
Was also improperly put on
And there were some
the building.
installation issues too, right? And Mr. Hughes knows a lot more about that than I do, but, yeah, he's got that chapter and verse.
Any other questions?
Good?
Is there a motion to take this budget under advisement?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions or comments? Okay, all in favor of accepting this budget under advisement?
Mr. D.
Thank you, Mr. Paul. Save your good questions for Mr. Fantasia. He is so ready for them.
Here. You just got thrown under the bus.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hello there. I'm Christy Michaud. I'm the Director of Data Assessment and Accountability, as well as the Acting Director of Curriculum and Professional Learning. Appreciate the opportunity to present to you for the first time. Since Mrs. Armfield's retirement in June, I have taken over the curriculum and the professional learning budgets. As you would expect, I spent much time looking over the history of the budget, the expenditures and trends and things, and have taken an opportunity to get to know what our needs are for both of the departments, professional learning and curriculum, for the upcoming school year. Let's start this evening with the professional learning budget, if you'd like. Current year was budgeted at $164,504. The proposed budget is at $132,503. You see a decrease there of $32,000, and that speaks mostly to an item that I feel is more appropriately placed in the curriculum budget, so we can sort of speak to that when we get there. But that is a pretty significant reason for the decrease there in this particular budget. The first item is the in-service for paraeducators. So that's an increase of $2,000. We're seeing increased trend of expenditures for our paraprofessionals, more paraprofessionals accessing their benefit through their CBA. This is training that's very specific to the individual students that they're working with. So that $2,000 reflects an increase there. The next two items is a decrease in the amount of $2,000. The first is the in-service professional staff. Again, that was that $2,000 is just a decrease of trend of expenditures. The next item is the same. This is for our assistant principal line for in-service, and we have a decreasing trend of expenditures there. The next item is the item that's down by 30,000, and that's in professional services, professional development. I'm removing this particular item from the professional learning budget, and I feel that it's more appropriately placed in the curriculum budget, so you'll see it reflected there. And that's it for the professional learning budget in terms of any significant increases or decreases. Can I answer any questions that are specific to professional learning?
This might be jumping ahead. So you've got a decrease because you're transferring a lot from professional learning to curriculum. But curriculum also looks like it's got a decrease.
It is, and I can speak to those items once we get there.
Not gonna complain.
All right.
I have questions on the professional development budget. I entertain a motion to accept that budget under advisement.
I'll make that motion.
Any seconds? Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions?
Okay, so moving on to the curriculum department budget. Current year budget was at $459,389. Proposed budget is at $450,776. That is a decrease of $8,612. The first item that you see there is an increase. Again, that's the item that we moved from professional learning over to curriculum. The next item is a decrease as well in the amount of $2,000. This was as a result of a decreasing trend of expenditures for the elementary curriculum supplies. The next line is down $15,000. This was last year, or for this present school year, this was budgeted at the district level for the enhancement of STEAM at the middle school. So where that would be off cycle, or now the expenses would be absorbed at the school level, this item or this particular line is down from our budget. On your second page there, you see an increase of $4,755. This amount was previously budgeted in a different line. It was the information access line. I feel that it's more appropriately placed in the district level books and informational resources, and so I've just moved it between departments, if you will. Next is a decrease of $23,000. This is at the elementary level. We don't have any major textbook adoptions that we are looking at for the upcoming school year, so that particular line is down $23,000. The next line is another decrease. This is at the secondary level. We are not looking at any major textbook adoptions at the secondary level for the 18-19 school year as well. That's down $6,938. And the next two lines are with regard to our elementary information access fees and the secondary information access fees. So the first there is at the elementary. It's down $72,260. That's an off-cycle subscription of the elementary blended learning resource. That was a 2-year subscription within that line. And again, that's off-cycle. And you'll see that on the next line, there's an increase of about that same amount, $72,824, and that is for blended learning subscription at the secondary level. Okay. just talking about off-cycle, on-cycle there with those two. And that concludes significant increases and decreases for the curriculum budget.
Yes.
Just curiosity more than anything. So you have books and so forth at the district level. I'm curious why that's not something that's sort of more at the individual schools.
It actually is. So what we do at the district level, if it's a new adoption, it's a new course, we're at the high school, we're purchasing the books for the first year, and then any additional purchases for that particular book or any renewals of the book are purchased at the school level. So we pretty much take care of at the first year of spending, if you will, for things such as books. You saw that with the enhancement of our STEAM program, first year of implementation. We absorbed those costs at the district level in our budgets.
Not sure why, but okay. I was just curious. Thank you.
Jeff?
If I may, the schools absorb costs during the cycle that those are in use, should their enrollment numbers go up or anything like that. So curriculum will kick off the initiative for those new books and programs if it's entirely new, but the schools would then take over from there.
Thanks.
So we do that with all of the startups, Joe?
Pretty much, yeah.
So it's on the district side the first year, and thereafter, any changes or replacement goes to the school?
Correct, yeah, and I think that might be reflective, if you will, of what, I don't want to speak out of school year, but I think it might be reflective of having a major drive on curriculum updates
Right.
At the district level,
Yep.
which I think we've seen in the past number of years,
Mhm.
particularly looking at a vertically aligned curriculum. So,
Any other questions?
so I have a question.
Yes.
If no one else does, and one of the things that we had outstanding tonight, a lot of our principals have come and made note of the fact that Title I funding is down.
Yes.
They have each had requests for interventionist costs to be included as part of their budget. One of the items that we have open this evening, the Budget Committee had requested information on for this meeting, were what the costs of those interventionists would be. And so what would you and I talked a little bit about what that's going to look like. What are your thoughts, and if you could give us a little bit of a background on that?
Looking at the salary schedule for the third year of teacher's contract, 18-19 school year, I did note that a first-year teacher or a teacher, on step one would be at about 36.6, I believe is what it was.
Mm-hmm.
I think when we look at our Title I tutors, they're paid through the grant, obviously. Tutors are typically paid around $25 an hour. Oftentimes, those are teachers that are right out of school. They're teachers that are gaining experience. It's a great opportunity for them to be trained, especially specialized programs such as multisensory programs and various strategies and things. A nice way for them to gain some experience before moving into a classroom teacher's position. So I think if we were looking at bringing on some additional interventionists, I think my feeling would be that we'd probably be looking at novice teachers that would come in and such as our Title I tutors come in and work with small groups of students. Our struggling learners, I know that our principals also talked with you not only about our RTI model, but our enrichment model, where we are supporting students, trying to personalize learning more for our struggling learners as well as our accelerated learners.
Jeff?
Yes.
When we do we look at the costs off the salary schedule, it really doesn't include all the, just salary, not the benefits. So when we look at salaries from this point on, could we kind of combined, in other words, base salary of 36, well, what are the other expenditures that go along with that? So there's a total of net, not just looking at one piece. Yeah.
So would you want him to do it max? Because you don't know if that person's
No,
going to
no,
want to
no,
family.
what I'm saying is, I'll give you an example. If we were going to look at an interventionist at the middle school for like the enrichment in math, if the base salary was X amount
Say 36.
say 36, is it another 10, 12, 13,000? So we have a ballpark when we're doing the bottom line of the budget. How many of those would impact the budget?
You mean with the benefits?
Yeah, oh, yeah,
So you would have to do max benefits.
right,
So that's what I meant.
Okay.
So you would want him to
right.
say max benefits possible.
And then versus the tutoring, I'm assuming at 25, it doesn't have the minimum benefits.
Right.
But we do have some things that impact that on the benefit line,
Hmm?
even for tutors.
Yeah.
So it'd be nice to have that, just to gaze at if we are talking, when we're talking increasing personnel or
Hmm?
reduction.
Yeah, so my estimate on that would be, if we're looking at a $36,000 position, probably about 56,000.
12 to 15,000 more. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's conservative, but I think that's probably a
Yeah,
fair
well,
number.
yeah. Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. $13 to $15, depending upon how many years you have
Sorry.
in, how many years you've already started paying into, for example, retirement. It's on the scale.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Athletics.
Thank you very much. Put my eyes on. It's been a while. Just looking at athletics and looking at the summary sheet, there are a few lines that are being transferred to be more reflective of where things are needed. For example, the very first piece on the summary sheet deals with PE supplies at the high school. It's a decrease of a little more than $3,100. However, that majority of that is being moved into new equipment in the PE line. And it does compensate for some things that we want to purchase for our unified PE class, as well as our fitness education classes. So that's where that is reflected. You'll see the increase of $3,059 in the new equipment of PE. The next line there is an increase under professional services, and that is the Access Sports Medicine account, the athletic trainers account. The increase is for $5,000, but it is an optional increase. And what I mean by that is, as I was communicating with Access Sports to discuss rates for the next year, are they gonna increase, are they gonna decrease, stay the same rather? They are staying the same. There is a new, and it's very new, so I really don't have a lot of details on it, but it's a cardiac screening of athletes. It's very new. They haven't really done it with many schools. They were trying to pilot it with a school this year, so they were gonna talk to not just us, but other schools that they have contracts with, to explain it and see if it's something that we would want to engage in. But it would be optional, so that $5,000 increase is not a hard increase. If we choose not to do a cardiac screening, the price will be the same as it was last year. But I wanted to put it in and reflect that, just in case, we decide, hey, you know what? This is something that we really want to get behind next year, it would be there.
Great.
Just wanted to explain that to people, because that's really the largest increase in any of our lines. What's gonna happen at the middle school and high school under game expenses? Game officials at both the middle school and the high school, their rates will increase $2 per official per game. And that's something that's non-negotiable, that's coming down from the officials in the NHIA in Tri-County. So you'll see an increase at the middle school level to the tune of about $27.83, and the high school about $28.05. So that's where your increases are in the game expenses. You'll see a decrease in our new equipment for athletics at the high school, $1,750 decrease. And then in replacement equipment for athletics, you'll see an increase of $2,100. In that area, at the high school, one of the issues that has come up is the scoreboard in the high school gymnasium. The console is, for lack of a better word, outdated. They're not making that console anymore. So I've met with the company, Scoreboard Enterprises, and they've come and they've talked to me a little bit. They are well versed in what we have at both the middle school and the high school. What I'd love to be able to do is I'd love to be able to get a new console. What I might have to do, depending on when they come in and inspect a little bit more, and that's why it's reflected in here, is they may need to do something to the board. So I have it reflected in there. I'm kind of hoping it's just the console. But if it isn't, there might be some pieces in the board that they may have to make compatible with the new consoles. So that's the main pieces of my budget and where increases and decreases would be. I'd be happy to answer any questions, but for the most part, it's pretty straightforward, fixed costs and officials' fees going up and an optional contracted services.
Yes.
I think you had your hand up
No,
first.
no, that's okay, Alan.
Can we just talk about the cardiac evaluation piece? So was this a situation where Access Sports came to Timberlane and said, would like to do a pilot program with you, or how did that kind of evolve?
No, they're not piloting with us at all.
Okay.
What happened was I communicated, much like I do with all of the businesses that we are in business with. As I was talking to Dr. Heaton over at Access Sports Medicine, I said, listen, I'm getting my budget prepared, and I need to know if your contract with us is going to increase at all. And if it's not, that's fine, but if it is, I need to know, because I have to reflect it. He said, there is no increase. He said, the only thing that I do want to just open up a dialogue with you on, he says, and I'll have more information as we go, is there is a new cardiac screening process that is out there that they are also investigating, and they're looking to see if they can pilot that with some schools. And I said, well, I'm not gonna commit to anything until we really know details and what does that process actually look like as well. However, what's the cost? He said it would be $5,000. I said, okay, so what I did here is I put the $5,000 in there in case as we go forward, people say, hey, you know what, we really want to do that. We'd have it. If we don't want to do it, there's no pressure from Access or from even us right now. It's really new, and I don't know any schools in the surrounding area right now that are doing it.
Or the benefits?
Or the benefits, or the pitfalls. So it's brand spanking new. So,
And so from the perspective of, it sounds like it's a pilot program, they'd love to have some schools signed on for. It's what I'm hearing,
Well-
it sort of sounds like. So I'm wondering, the reason I'm asking the question is I'm wondering if 5,000 is, well, you want to do a pilot, maybe for 2,500. Is it open to negotiation so you can say, we piloted it with Timberlane?
it's also a situation based on one conversation. So it's also a situation where, parents would have to agree to have their child screened.
Right.
And it's also, it's the way he described it to me, it was kind of that 13 to 15-year-old kid that they were looking at. So again, as I say to people, I can't answer. I mean, I'm a parent of two. I would want, to have the say in something like that. And the other piece too that I was just curious about and haven't gotten a really great answer yet is, what does that process look like?
And what does it catch that the current?
What does it catch? But what is the actual process?
Yeah.
Like I know the concussion test is a computerized test. I know that. What does the cardiac test?
The stress test, the physical stress test.
What is it? Right. Show me what that will be. So, like I said, I really just wanted to make sure that if this caught a little fire and we wanted to do something, I wanted to make sure that it was reflected in there, and then that's our decision anyway. So.
Yeah, I would like to see more information on it.
So would I. That was just really quick.
Basically where I'm standing on that.
And again, I did not want to not put the number in.
Totally fair.
And then someone say to me afterwards, well, you knew it was going to be that. Where is it? And we wouldn't have it. So that's all.
I just want to share with the rest of the committee, in another life, I'll age myself, in 1986, as a assistant football coach in Division II football, we had a kid that we couldn't figure out why physically he was having issues. At the college level, you have athletic trainers who will put him on a stress test, and you find out it's really a heart issue, and he never played football again. So any type of cardiac or respiratory testing that we can do at this level, I think, is a prudent thing to do.
We actually lost a kid at my son's school, college, 3, last year. Cardiac.
Yeah.
It was actually history of the family. I guess I should have probably even known,
Right.
but it was.
Yeah, and like I said, I just,
I think it's something that should be standard.
you know, there's a lot to learn and a lot to research from the perspective of what is actually being offered.
Right.
You know, and that's something that we'll continue to
Right.
research.
I fully support the cardiac testing, for a lot of reasons that many folks know, and totally support it. My question is it something that's new, that is just new, or is it something that's
Yeah, we're just
really
doing a stress
duplicative?
test, which would probably be something we could do.
And we have a relationship, I think, with Access Sports and Dr. Heaton, that he'll give us a lot of details. And then we can also share, I mean, you know, I was at an athletic directors meeting today with ADs from all over the state. I kind of would want to know, okay, what are you guys hearing? What are you doing? Some of them use other companies. Are they also looking at cardiac screening? Do you know what I mean? I mean,
Right.
there's some work to be done here. Like I said, I just, you know, when I have to come with figures, I just don't want to leave a figure out and then ask you back again. So that's all.
Appreciate it.
So, thank you.
So for the game expenses,
Mhm.
so we have a couple of increases there. Looking at those line items historically, they're underspent. So if we look at 2016 budgeted, we were 4,000 under for that. If you go back to 17, we budgeted 16, we're almost 6,000 we spent less. In that whole category, when you look at it, 2017 was 91,000, we only spent 73. So are those increases actually required? I mean, that's what I'm trying to figure out, what those big differences are.
So just talking about the games, first of all, there's also in there is game help, is police details and different things like that. But where you're talking, when I factor in, and there's some unknowns, for example, some years I'll have a couple of more freshman teams than others, or some years I'll have more kids and more games than others. What I try to do in here, and again, because I do not want to come back to you and ask you for anything, I factor in as though we're going through the whole season and playoff. So if I have, you know, a pretty good run with several of our teams, that's great. And if I have less than a pretty good run in certain years, then we didn't spend that money because we didn't make the playoff, or we didn't do that. You know what I mean? There's extra games that I have to factor in, but I might not get to. But I have to be the optimist
So
of
it's best
athletic.
case.
As the optimist of the athletic director world, I have to budget for
Don't
all
wanna
of
jinx it if you don't.
Right.
Yeah,
I don't want my kids and coaches saying, you didn't budget for us to go that far. So, but yes, and more often than not, we're not gonna use it all.
Yep.
But we need to have it there in case we need to use it.
Yep.
Is kind of how that works.
Okay, yeah, I was just wondering what the variables were for.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any other questions on this budget? I'll entertain a motion to accept this budget under advisement.
So moved.
A second? Any discussion? All in favor? It's unanimous. Opposed is 0. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay. Moving right along. administrative report?
Yes. So I believe everyone should find in their packet a copy of the capital improvement plan year one summary. And I wanted to go through that and walk through that with the committee so that we all have an opportunity to understand what that is. So you'll see a couple different columns. One's description, request ID, and the submitter. Next is the final CIP column, and that's the column that was really approved by the CIP committee. And you'll see the total at the bottom. There was that one request, that 268 for is FACB 0011. That should not have been part of that plan. However, my observation, my take on the CIP is that all committees should be working with one document. And if we agree or disagree, whatever it is, we should all be looking at the same requests. So you'll see the next column would be the Timberlane Regional School Board as of 11/2. Now, there were no changes made at their last meeting, at the 11/2 meeting, but they had made changes at their last meeting. What this seeks to demonstrate is where we are at with the requests at the end of that particular meeting. And so I'll go through a couple of notes. Where we've had an item that has been moved up, and we'll take the Atkinson Playground, for example, that's shown on the final CIP is 12,000. You'll see the next column, or the next category under Timberlane Regional School Board is 1718, and BudCom 1718 as well. Our committee has taken no action. I'm showing it as a 1718 because it's being done this year, and we have there's nothing there for us to approve or not approve. So in other words, we haven't not approved it, it's just gone from the plan because it's being resolved. You'll see the next line down, which is the fiber connection between the schools. Final CIP, that number was 300. That's the number that was agreed upon, not agreed upon, it was the best estimate that we had at the time. Since then, that number has dropped to 218, 264. And I've listed it both in the school board and in the budget committee in that amount because we're not approving, there'd be no opportunity to approve 300. That number is now 218. So I think that's probably informative on my philosophy going through. I will make one note on the FACB 0011, which was the construct admin office and conference room in Courtyard 1. That's the 268,000 we spoke about.
Mm-hmm.
It's been removed from the school board as they've agreed to remove it. Our committee has not agreed to remove it. I didn't want to take any liberties, but if you're comfortable removing it, I'd like to remove it from the schedule.
Make a motion that we remove $268,000 FACB 001.
One.
Yeah,
So made.
from the CIP. Second. Yeah. Any discussion? Yes.
No, let me back up. So, are we looking to remove it because the school board?
No, it's
was a
being pushed
mistake.
out. It's being rescheduled.
Got it, okay.
I wanted this board to acknowledge, to have control over that.
So this is an administrative correction based upon who made the decision to move it over? Move it out of this column.
Sorry? Yeah, move it out of the school. We're just going to eliminate it from the budget committee column.
I see the zero with the school board.
Yep.
Being on CIP, I'm just wondering who made the decision to push it out to the following
whenever.
year, to whenever.
We made that decision, or that decision was made, I believe, at one of the last meetings before the summer break. And it was not picked up as an action taken by the committee
Okay.
in the final run-through of it. But when we looked back on it, after it was presented as final, when I think Sue Sherman looked back on it.
Sue picked it up.
Sue picked it up and said, oh, you know what? At that meeting, we voted to push that off.
I'm fine with it. I just wonder if Sue caught it, that's great. I'm just saying,
Sue picked it up.
as long as it's not a board-driven thing, we
No.
have to be independent.
No, and in fact, if anything, it was simply that it appeared there on that schedule, and I made a commitment that, you know what? We can all disagree on everything,
Altering.
but we're gonna have one list of everything,
That's
so.
fine. No, thank you for clarifying.
Yep. So we really haven't, the budget committee really hasn't taken much action on any of these. I really wanted to just put this out there and let you know, and you can do so at any time. But for tracking purposes, as we're moving on and as the school board is moving on, I figured that this might be a nice opportunity, a nice way for us to see.
We have a motion to remove it.
Yep.
Is there any more discussion?
No.
All in favor of opposed? Abstentions? Okay.
So on that note, if I could continue on, Mr. Flynn, Principal Flynn, when he was here, did not speak to his CIP requests that were on the list, and one of them was FACB 009, and that's in the amount of $15,000. There was a proposal by the former principal, Mr. Hogan, to repurpose some space involving special education and regular ed. It was a decent plan, I thought. Mr. Flynn has come in and said that's not really part of my plan. I'm okay with removing that. I have no real request for it at this time. Again, it's on the list, and here it is. He's not really in favor of it. It would probably be appropriate for the board, for our committee or this committee, to vote that off of the list as well if you deemed appropriate.
Make a motion to remove FACB 0009 from the CIP.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor of removing this item from the CIP? Opposed?
And
Abstentions? Okay.
Can I have some clarification on that? Is that gonna go then back to the CIP then, is it into complete removal, not a push on out, you know, for another year? It's gonna be totally removed from the.
Yeah, as I understand it, what he will do is he will put in a new, if he's ready for it, he will put in a requisition to the CIP to add it at that time.
So it would be a whole new entry, that's all I wanted, okay.
yeah, at this point, my impression is that it's not part of his.
Nope, that's
Plan.
fine, I just wanted to clarify it.
And then one more. What happens to this item under the school board column? It'll go back at their next meeting?
They can, you know, this committee is the committee that decides really what goes forward as part of the budget. So they'll probably take a look at it and say, oh, well, if they're not in favor of it, maybe that's something we can remove as well. So the reason that I have the 3 columns is really to get the perspective for this committee as to what the CIP, where the CIP was at, and where the school board was at.
I do agree that this is a good idea, having them both right here, all 3 of them there.
Yeah. And just in the interest of keeping things tidy, I'm not tracking when things were removed. I'm just saying, hey, as of their last meeting, this is where we were at. As of our last meeting, this is where we were at.
Exactly.
That's it.
Nope,
I have, yes, related to this, I have a question on the tennis courts.
Mhm.
We heard in the last meetings that, in fact, the tennis courts were not, I got the feeling from the presenter that that expansion of the tennis courts wasn't necessary. That they had enough courts to fulfill what the kids are doing. And I'm wondering if we should recommend to CIP that this be pushed out a year.
The school board actually
Yeah, it didn't.
made it 0, so
Yeah,
that they,
so it's
put
there
the,
now.
Yeah, but I want this, that's
Should be
that's
us
the school
making that.
board. I'm asking this committee what they think. Should this,
what transpired at the school board, Dan?
They decided to defund it. I mean, it's a separate board. I mean, if we want to defund it
Well,
on his recommendation, then that's what we'll do. The school board doesn't want to have it done.
Okay.
So I can maybe offer a little bit of perspective on this. We had 2 different proposals. One was to add additional courts, and the other was to resurface the courts that we have.
Correct.
So in our current year's budget, we have, I believe, $95,000 to resurface the courts that we have. When we did further analysis on it and had them out to take a look, your sub-base, your substructure, really, it's not going to support putting this substantial money into it. You're really going to have to do a reconstruct of what you have. So the $95,000 was already there, but it's not being used for the purpose of resurfacing because that's really not going to cover what needs to be done. So there had been the $90,000 in there as an adjustment to take the 180, to take the 95 and the 90, and do it as an end of year, beginning of year project, and merge the 2, and you'd come out with $185,000, which would be enough to reconstruct the courts altogether. The school board's perspective, from what I understand, is that they are not looking to go in that direction, and therefore some of the funds from that from the $95,000 that are in there this year have been reallocated. So essentially, if that $95,000 in this year's budget has been reallocated to other capital projects, and we only have 90 proposed in next year's budget,
It's still not enough.
it's not enough to do what needs to be done relative to those courts. I wanted to put that out there because it's a little bit more of a intricate situation, but as long as you have full knowledge.
So it sounds like what we need on this then is to go back to CIP and say, look, what we need to do this the right way is 185 or whatever. But as it stands now, it couldn't even happen
Right.
next year at all,
Only because the,
or we do one of them.
well, no, again, you say we'll do it right and do it at 185. We already had the 95 to resurface, and they put this 90 in, so that between the current year budget and next year's budget, we'd have the 185. The school board doesn't seem to have an appetite for that, and they've reallocated the 95 for this year. So really, we're not going anywhere with the 90 that's in here now if we don't have the 95 from the current year.
Yeah, which is why I'm saying we need an item, it's the item.
One item, yeah.
Yeah.
Strike
So, is it going to, I know Sue's the chairman of the board, but being on that committee, is that part of Sue's first agenda to review the school board's decision? And is it our responsibility to zero the 90,000 out for the
So-
CIP tonight?
The school board voted to actually move it back. So, everybody's gonna complain, but the way the flow chart, there's no flow chart for this, right? It's not.
I would differ with you, but go ahead.
Well, I just don't wanna get in that conversation of which direction it goes in. But the CIP, as far as I know, isn't meeting again until March, right?
That's correct.
So.
She can call a meeting anytime
No,
she
no, no,
wants.
but when we approve this document,
Yeah,
which is why Jeff hasn't altered this first column,
I understand.
this is the document. So
Mhm.
anything we do, CIP doesn't have to meet and talk about it, because it's just gonna go off the recommendations of whatever the budget committee approves and whatever the school board recommends.
I don't think you're following me. The money that was in this current year's budget for the tennis courts, correct me if I'm wrong, has been reallocated.
Yep.
So what I'm trying to say is that's gone, so there's nothing being done. Now, on CIP, wouldn't it make sense to have a special meeting to review the zeroing out of those items, so we're all clear when we do meet in March, where our starting point is? I guess that's where I'm coming from, making a recommendation to Sue. Because
Yeah.
my point is, I'm on both committees. I heard one side of, we needed the course. Mrs. Hammond corrected me at last meeting, and that's fine. But that's not where we started from when I started CIP. That's what it's not a confusion. I understand the flow chart you're trying to get to. School board makes the final decision on wherever the money gets dispersed. Our job is to have a bottom line of what we're funding.
Right.
Period. What you guys decide at your level, quite frankly, that's your bailiwick.
Right, I understand. So you, I don't think Sue is going to, and I'm not trying to speak for Sue at all, but I think that she'll have her agenda when you guys sit down in March and say, this is what happened over the course of the year, and this is where we're at right now, you know? And as far as logistics go, I don't know, does Mr. Flynn need to put a request in to say, I'm gonna remove this from CIP? Is that how it works? Is that what he has to do? The 15,000?
I just spoke for him. He has no interest or appetite for that project
But,
at this time.
but as far as the CIP process goes, does he have to write to CIP a request form saying, remove this?
I don't think we have it in our flow chart that way, if I'm not
So
correct.
CIP could remove it without anybody's suggestion, let's just put it that way.
Right, I mean, and here's, the bailiwick is connecting the dots between the subcommittee of a school board to us, and that's correct. I wish it would be in writing from a principal or an athletic director saying, take it off of CIP, Jeff.
So
I really think there needs to be a paper trail of the rationale why it's being removed or money's reallocated. You may have it in the notes, in the minutes from a school board meeting, but we're in this meeting, now we have two sets of minutes, and that's where my confusion comes from, because we are the new budget committee for this upcoming 18-19 budget.
Not to worry at all, I'll address it briefly, and that is that if anything that's recommended by the CIP committee is recommended, if it's not approved, then it gets pushed into year one. Automatically, by default, I move everything into year one that's deferred. I then send that out to the budget owners and the people who have submitted those requests and say, take a look and let me know any new requests, any changes to the requests that you have. So automatically, that 15 would essentially get moved to the next year. He will come back with a request and with his request form and just say,
You're
all
all
set.
Okay, thank
So
you.
to your point, it's a valid point, and everyone knows the process. It's fair.
I just want both the board and budget committee and the subcommittee, the CIP, to have the information. That's all.
So it's almost like you would want I would expect Angelo to come back and say, all right, let's,
Right.
with the tennis courts, you know what I mean, or
Right.
whatever it is, you
Right.
know? I want him, give me the 180, or I don't want him.
Well, the problem is there, because I've had a tennis court taken down at another school district, and when you look at what work needs to be done, the reclaimer has to be brought in, they basically take the fencing down, and it's a bigger job than actually doing a brand-new one, to be quite frank about it, because the surface isn't the issue, it's what you have underneath for the gravel surface, so it doesn't crack and peel and do other things. And so, it could be more than 200 grand just to do what,
So at that point, why don't we just build 2 new tennis courts and reclaim this?
Right,
It'd be
that's-
cheaper.
That's what the proposal was for 185,000.
Right.
So what does the committee wish to do with it, anything?
nothing, I mean, I don't think we
Stop
can make a
playing tennis?
motion. No.
No,
Okay.
I'll make the motion to zero out that line item for $90,000. For account FACS-0005, construction of 2 new tennis courts in the amount of $90,000 to zero.
I'll second it.
Your second?
Sure.
Any more discussion? All in favor of this?
Unanimous.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay.
So I have a couple other items, and I didn't intend that we'd be reviewing the CIP list during the administrative section. I just
Yeah.
wanted to explain it. I have just a couple more quick things. Anything involving email, if we could tie out after, just to make sure I'm emailing to the correct address, or if it's ending up in some folder or something, let's see if we can get that straightened out. Another form that you have is the contact information for the committee, which is final. If you don't have a copy of it, I want to make sure that those were out there and kind of able to provide that. And I do apologize, to our viewers out in live stream land, we are only live streaming tonight. We're not out there on cable. And I am aware that our broadcast is, and I don't know how the audio is, but I'd like to apologize and let everyone know. We have been, I think, Sean, you had said, the equipment's in failure, what are we waiting for? Let's just get it done. I'm gonna trip everyone out. This is the current broadcast that we have. So our board knows if your constituents are asking about it, we are underway on the new equipment, and I'd like to recognize that and
This is an equipment failure that is not, this is Julie, she volunteered her time to be here tonight, we're training some techs to be back up for Dean, who's in Key West tonight.
Good for her.
Next time I'll be in Key West and he'll be here. Yeah, we're getting some techs for back up for Dean, and Jeff, you wanna talk about the RFP going out soon?
It just to acknowledge that it's out there, it is poor quality, I acknowledge it's poor quality, and we do have that in the works for replacement. So if anyone should ask, it does look like we are in a Eastern Bloc country. So go ahead.
I have one question, administrative question. Have you heard from the state yet on retirement and medical?
Yes, look at that. You see, you were looking.
I didn't see it.
It's right there. So that was the next thing on my list. Our health insurance GMR came in approximately 6.8%. Now, that's not necessarily a 6.8% across the board, and I'll be going through the analysis to put together, and we can talk about what the budget's going to look like altogether when it gets put in. And I have HR working on that right now. It's not 6.8% across the board. Different plans have different ratings. And while our average percentage may be 6.8%, when you weight it to the plans that it impacts, it could be higher or lower in practice. So I'll put that out there. We should have a final number, and I believe that we'll have something for our next meeting, which is the 21st.
Yes.
So that'll be in the works to try and get that number out there. We also had, and I'll let everyone know, a little bit of an odd phenomenon that I'm looking into with our health insurance participation. We had participation down. Noteworthy enough to say, we were down in participation. And in the current year, our participation is back up. When I look at our prior year, however, based on where the GMR was, it doesn't appear that it correlates exactly. So my point is that when we look at actuals, we're looking at actuals based on lower participation than what we had the previous year, and we're looking at lower participation than where we are now. So I'll put that out there. We can take a look at that as we go through that review process. In the state retirement, we do have rates in that are, it's only 1.69 as a percentage point higher for particularly for our teacher contributions, 1.69%, but realistically that represents a 10% increase over current contributions. So just the way that it works out, yes. So that's about a 10% increase. We had some additional, we appear to be underspent on that from budget last year, so I'm looking into how that occurred. So I don't know that we'll necessarily have a 10% increase as part of our budget for teachers, because we did have some additional funds. I'm not sure why, and I'm looking into that. We have a transportation RFP that's going to be going out our 5-year contract with our current regular education transportation provider for student is up this year. We have had the benefit in some ways of a very favorable contract, because since the commencement of our contract with First Student, I'm sure you recall, maybe a year ago, there was some union labor problems that they were having relating to some desired pension contributions. It didn't impact us directly, but our shop was affiliated with that Teamsters shop. Long story short, it did get resolved, but they have had some additional costs I would expect as a result of that, and that can be in the form of 401k contributions. They have also upped their wages since we've been under contract with them without impact on us, and they've also had to offer health insurance that they had not contemplated as part of the initial contract 5 years ago. This was such an issue in our, and we ran into special ed transportation RFP the last cycle last year. They actually included a carve-out in their contract so that we would be responsible for picking up any mandated expenses, like any mandated health insurance expenses or anything like that. If they were extraordinary, they would actually be on us to pick up. So I have a funny feeling that we've been the beneficiary of a very favorable contract, and I don't know how long that would continue for. I would estimate probably about a 15 to 20% increase in that contract. And the way that that works is we have a number of different ways that the bus company charges us, and sometimes it's on a per bus run basis, like a daily rate, and we have other sporting event rates. There are other fuel escalators and that sort of thing. So it'll be interesting to see where that comes in. I expect that that'll be in at the beginning of the year. The school board, this is a big contract. The school board had approved, which I'm very grateful for, $7,500 out of the current year funds to work with a consultant who's familiar with the industry and very familiar with the local area and the local market, to make sure that we are able to get and obtain, negotiate the best deal for the district in terms of routing and offerings from the company itself. We've had a lot of service-related issues involving driver shortages, involving notification to parents. We as a district have tried very, very hard to try and make that process as seamless as possible. However, I expect that we're going to be able to have a good objective look at our routing and at the technology that we're using as part of that process. So I'm encouraged by that. It's short money when you consider the overall cost of the transportation budget for a 5-year contract.
So how should we budget for transportation? What we're currently doing, or what should
You know, it poses an interesting question. I do not see, I would not be surprised to see a 20% increase, and it could be a 15% increase. What ended up happening, and I don't have the exact numbers on our special transportation RFP, but we didn't see just a daily bus rate increase. We saw an increase on the daily bus rate. We also saw the way that they billed us was now different. So, for example, we used to have a bus for the day, right? So we could then have that bus do a drop-off within district at a placement or at a work opportunity. The bus company then said, no, we're now enforcing our hours. So even though you have a bus for a day, you have a bus for, let's say, 6 hours, which covers our morning and our afternoon runs. We were then looking at midday runs that were being priced out separately. So again, we don't see those costs in only a daily rate. We see those costs in all of the ancillary. We may get a very favorable contract in with a very low threshold for fuel escalator. So the fuel escalator maybe, it may start at a very low amount. So we don't feel that immediately. They're able to offer a good rate on paper, but the effect of it can be a lot more expensive. This is just a trend that I saw. I was a little surprised. It's there with our special transportation provider.
When is that RFP meant to go out?
I believe they're working now on specs. I think that there's talk that it may be out and back in perhaps as early as January.
So there would be, you would be able to open up bids in January?
Yes.
Where in January?
Yep. I don't know that, yeah.
Because we have our public hearing on the 11th. And that would be the last place for us to turn around and address that. Unless if we go wait for the deliberative session.
Correct. If it were, and I don't quote me on this, but I think that if it were addressed at deliberative, if I recall, and you probably know this as well, if it goes up, I think you'd have to have another hearing. But if it goes down, you'd be okay. I know that this board voted after the deliberative to reduce the budget.
True.
And if the budget goes down, it would be okay, but there's a public hearing requirement on there. So the question is, if it were addressed either at public hearing or at deliberative, I think if it went up, you'd have some notice issues. If it went down, it would be fine.
I would. When is the RFP going to be ready to go out the door to solicit companies?
We're working now with the consultant to get the terms of that down.
Because if you could have that done by mid-December, you should be able to have something within a couple of weeks' time frame after that.
I would, usually about 3 weeks to a month, especially with the holidays. So, but I think your timing's probably not unreasonable, and I think that it would be into January that we'd be looking to get these back. These have we have a little bit more of lead time required on these because it's not like I hate to say it, even with our food service company, they're coming into our facility, a lot of times we'll take over the employees from the old vendor, and they can do things differently. The bus companies do tend to have to go and secure space, secure the vehicles, drivers might be there. So it's a little bit earlier than we would normally go out, but I'm thinking early January is the best that I'm hearing. And if the 11th is our public hearing, or if that's an opportunity that we have to make some adjustments, then I can definitely check in with Tom and see what his estimate on it is.
Any other?
I will say though that the planning of this is not the greatest here. This contract, knowing that this magnitude of this and the cost delta of this thing should have been addressed much earlier, so that you're having bids coming back in this fall time so that we could properly plan for this.
Yeah.
This is going to be very chaotic at the end, and it's not reflecting very good, I don't think.
I think one of the tough things with this is we're still 6 months out from when the contract would commence, and we normally wouldn't have them out, quite that, or back in quite that early. I will say that, but I think based on what it is that we're facing right now, in terms of what our performance has been from our current provider, we're making darn sure that we don't just, we do it right, and I think that is some of the time here. I think that we can go out and take our RFP, update the dates from the last time it went out, send it out, and end up with a similar situation that we're in right now in terms of performance, and I think that we want to make sure we're getting the very best value.
So Jeff, are you saying that some of the performance issues you got blindsided on as far as these, the way that they're billing you?
That's not so much a performance issue. I think that when I talk about a rate increase and what to expect from
Not specifically, you say you have that extra bus for a 6-hour period, but then you have it rated out to you differently?
No, that's on the special transportation side.
Right.
Because that went out last year.
What I'm saying is you're trying not to make the same issue come up in this next RFP.
Well, there are two different schools of thought. I think that when I see a trend in transportation, and I see it on the special transportation end, that they're now going for the extras.
Exactly.
I'm seeing it on the other end as well.
I mean by blindsided, in other words, they're gonna try to take every dollar away from our budget that they can justify versus, here's our contract, this is what we've agreed to, and then all of a sudden you're still having to pay them, and I call it being blindsided.
Yeah, I think to a degree, I think the point is that if you look at a daily rate and it's up X percent, that doesn't necessarily reflect when you actually get into it.
Right.
That they may be wanting more. You know, they may be trying to get more out of it. And then in some cases they're contractually entitled to it, and in other cases we may start pushing back where we're contractually entitled to it. So for example, we've had situations where we haven't had buses because there's been a driver shortage. And, you know, to the degree that we're entitled to a fee back on that, I think we're going to be looking for more of a fee in the next contract. Because it can't be, I don't have a driver, right? It can't be punitive, but it can't be the type of thing, I don't have a driver, I'm going to give you your money back. No incentive. We have a demand for buses, we have a contract for buses, and if you're not going to provide the buses, I don't expect that we're going to get credit for the bus for the day. I expect that you're going to be feeling it and be incentivized to make sure that you're properly staffed to provide us with what we've requested under the contract. So I think that's one thing that, for example, we're on our end, we're doing it as well.
Okay.
You know, so if we're getting some pushback from them in different ways, we're going to be leaning on them a lot more as well.
Good.
Any other administrative issues?
Nope, I think that's it.
Okay. Thank you for that. Next issue is Budget Committee. Yep, I'm sorry.
Eileen and I just wanted to give our Budget Committee an up-to-date report on strategic planning. We've had the first three community forums, and they were completed on November 1st. And the next community forum will be held on November 27th from 6:30 to 8:30 in Sandown North. At this time, Dr. Wilson is collecting all of the raw data from the meetings and passing information on to our consultant, Jay Voigt. And we have scheduled our next meeting for strategic planning to discuss the next steps for December 11th from 4 to 5:30 p.m. here at the SAU. And after that meeting on the 14th, we'll report back out to this committee.
Yes.
Just curious, what was the participation in the first?
The middle school was right around 50, elementaries was around 30, and we had in our meeting, I think, about 20 to 22 parents, and then we had a bunch of, we had a couple of board members, we had Eileen and I, and then we had the administrative staff from the SAU. And Mr. Woodworth actually was in one of the groups, so. And a lot of the things that in the three areas came back, basically what we had been discussing and what we got from the surveys that had gone out in August. So a lot of the same themes are coming back.
Did you get good responses on the survey that you had sent out
I
last
would-
summer?
I, from my point of view, being here, not the last one, but the one before as a staff member, I think it was a little bit down, but when we first did it before the big building program, people were very vested in getting their feedback in, and it was done by paper. I don't know if you remember correctly, it was sent out by an envelope, and there was an envelope inside, and it got sent back. This would have been about 1997. This time it was all computerized, so you would actually have to go in and take the survey, so I think that dropped the numbers down from the participation. Yeah.
Yes.
Anything else on strategic plan? I've got another separate topic. So just as an informational for the rest of the board and for viewers, so the Plastow reps for Budget Committee have decided to offer a constituent coffee on the 18th of November. We're going to try to do it, let's see how it goes, try to do it with some regularity. We haven't quite figured all that out yet. But it's going to be on the 18th of November from 9 until 11 a.m. At the Plastow Public Library in the History Room So it's an opportunity to sit down if people from Plastow have questions for the representatives, for us to sit with you and talk with you about that. So we just wanted to make sure that everybody was also aware of that. Or if you guys have anything else you wanted to add.
No, I'm good.
Can you go and ask questions?
Okay. Yep, we're all set. Next, school board, you said you have anything to add?
I didn't already cover.
Okay,
Going through everything.
all right. Moving on to the parking lot, old business. Or unfinished business, yes, yes.
No, I'll let you go. I'll grab this under other business. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, you sure? Okay. I guess the next question is to talk about we have a couple items from old that we tabled, one of which was the technology budget and the business operations budget. Let's look at technology first. Are there any questions or concerns about that budget? You had a chance to look it over.
If I may, I believe I was supposed to report back in December with the results of my survey I'm sending out to the faculty of the elementary schools on the interactive projectors. I have the survey's out there now, I'm getting the data, and I will be ready to report back to this board
We're
early
gonna be,
December.
yeah, as soon as you can, because in December, we're gonna be punching out the final.
Yeah, with the first meeting, is that the first week of December you guys are meeting? Would that be acceptable to do that?
14th,
Oh, the 14th, okay.
yeah. And that's.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be ready for then if that's acceptable to this board.
I would say that on the 30th, we have the joint meeting of November with the school board. That's going
Right.
to be the presentation
They're gonna be, and they'll be doing their presentations, and we'll start to punch out, well, we will have had the draft of the full budget at that point.
Yeah, you can have that.
I might have I have the data on the 30th. I won't be around the 30th. I can give you the data, the results of
That'll
the
be the
surveys, and then I can come back and talk about it on the 14th if you like.
You give us the data.
Okay.
Yeah,
One sheet, this is what it's gonna be.
Okay.
all right, so we'll keep the technology budget on the table for now.
Okay.
Okay? The next thing is the business service budget. Any news on the leasing issue?
I'm sorry. What was that? The leasing on the
Yeah, the leasing.
the fiber?
Yeah, on the
Well,
fiber.
yeah. No new updates. It's the same numbers I reported before. Was there any outstanding questions on
Well,
the leasing?
I didn't think so.
The only issue was, we were looking at an alternative to the 218,000 as
Right.
by doing the lease.
Yeah, and we had 3 and 5. We had 2 terms. One was 3 years. One was 5 years. And that was lease to own. It was a buyout, a dollar buyout at the end.
And what's the new number on that?
It's the same numbers I presented before. I don't have them in front of me, but I
It's still
presented that
218, it's
last.
still 218,000.
No, it
E-
goes up.
Maybe a better question would be, I think, is from this gentleman's point of view, he's gonna get his equipment either way, if you buy it outright or you lease it. So from your point of view, you don't care how it gets there, how it's financed, it's just that you get the equipment. It's more of a discussion between this
Financial
board
Yep.
of obtaining the money and the school board's direction on, that they believe that the leasing is the best way to go.
It does cost more in the end. It's 3.9% APR, whether you do 3 years or 5 years.
But you're also, it's a slight adder, but it's from an operational. you hit
It
more
is
of-
break it up, but there was the grant question as well, which it's
Right.
category 2 funding we will look at, which is infrastructure. That runs out in 2020. So any lease that goes beyond 2020,
You don't benefit.
we will not get, we might, it looks like they're not gonna opt that. My guess would be they're not gonna opt that.
You can get very creative in finance where you can have that, the structure of the contract is that at any given time, you can buy it for the residual amount on there. So you actually have the options in the lease. It's just that you gotta properly design the lease when it comes to that time. It's not an either or, you can have.
Yeah, we could look at that, I guess, yeah.
So that would
Okay,
be-
what's the sense of the committee on this, on the business budget, service budget? Can we approve it with the, what's the adjusted, proposed budget for this, now that it was originally 300 and now it's something less for the cable?
Yeah, it was 218.
Is that the 218
I know I would
amount?
like to see, I'd like to see some direction on the school board, which way do they prefer as as an outright purchase or a finance? And the other thing too is, looking at all these numbers at this such a low level, you really need to see the entire scope of the entire budget. Because if all of a sudden you come in with your analysis and the cost of insurance and all this bus contract comes in there, you know what, we're not gonna be looking at this stuff, we're gonna be looking at, oh my God, look at this school bus contract and how much that came in there. That might even make, I'm sorry to say, but they might push this on off because it's all going to the school bus contract. You really gotta look at these because you're gonna have a finite a dollar amount to play with and to assign it to different buckets. And right now, to turn around and say that we believe this is the bucket we wanna put money in without seeing the entire picture, I think it's not the proper way to do it, but it's up to this committee to decide otherwise.
Other thoughts on this? So, what do you want to, you still want to table this then? Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I will note that in the budget as it stands, and I believe is what you would have from the meeting, that, because that was the best information we had when it was presented, was the 218 and change. So that's reflected in the budget. It was put in.
218 is some change.
Yeah, it hasn't changed in the budget. That's how it came across. It came across as 300 less 82,000 to adjust for what you had as the most current rates.
And you know this anyway, but the APR and the lease terms could change, obviously, when we go to do the actual lease in July.
Correct, but
I just wanted to, you guys know that
I don't think the Federal Reserve is gonna change much in that. I mean, yeah, that's always a big if. But it would change that a dollar amount from 218 to something less, which, if you're looking at dollars, the lower you go, the more likelihood you got it to pass.
Well, this is the first pass. We understand that once because this will be incorporated into the master budget, which we will see on the 24th, the first draft. Just to give Jeff and his associates guidance. The budget's requested is here, so we need to make a decision, I think, at least to give them as a starting point, just to put a stake in the ground. Yes.
My question, and I'm gonna go to Dan with this one, is there a school board policy at this particular time about leasing and spreading debt over 2 or 3, 5 years? There is no policy, that's what I figured. So our job is the bottom line of the budget.
Yeah.
No offense, but I'm not worried about the leasing issue.
If it's
I don't-
218 and we lease, it's less the first year.
I understand that, but your job is gonna be to approve. If he makes an adjustment based upon a lease, that's gonna be your job to approve what Jeff is gonna bring to the table,
Right.
correct?
Okay.
Our job is to say, this is what, I'm fine with what did you say, 218, 318?
218.
I'm fine with that going forward as a budget member, knowing that it can change.
Right, we could lease it.
Exactly.
Yep.
I just wanna point that out.
But with that, though, that you can turn around and allocate 218 under the premise that it's going to be purchased. If the school board then turns around and says, we're gonna lease that, and just say for math's sake, it's $100,000 less, we just approved $100,000 that now the school board can then turn around and repurpose to whatever they decide that they wanted to do.
And I understand that that's why, as a budget committee, do we wanna put the onus on them to have a board policy when it comes to leasing? I mean, from just a ex-school administrator standpoint, I've always been taught it's better to purchase something if you can do it in the first year versus spreading it out over time, because you're gonna end up paying more in the end. That's all I'm pointing out. I know there's no board policy on this. That's not our job. How they decide to expend what's approved, we're just getting to the point of approval of the bottom line. How they end up spending it, I mean, it's really not in our domain, I don't believe, Mr. Chairman.
I would recommend, I would suggest that we just accept the budget as presented.
Yeah.
And when we start to actually get some real numbers down the road, we're still gonna be looking at this at least once, probably twice, before we go to public hearing. So my suggestion, my motion is that we accept the business service budget as presented. Is there a second?
Second it.
I'll second that.
Okay, any other discussion on this? All in favor? Opposed?
2 against.
Abstain? It's 7-2 and 1-0. All right. The next budget we need to look at is Sandown North and
No, that one's gonna stay on there.
Huh? It's
That
gonna
one
be
should
tabled?
stay on there, yeah.
It's gonna be tabled still.
So,
Okay.
can I just investigate further, since I wasn't around to watch Channel 22?
We got nothing next week.
All right, so is it gonna come up at some point for guidance?
Yes, that's why they're doing it.
So
It's
make a
next
note about
week.
my policy about
It's
leasing.
already there.
Okay, good. Because I hate to sound like a
No, it's
wounded
already
duck here.
there,
I
and
just,
they've dedicated an hour, it's listed as action,
here
so.
from my point of view. Goal number 4, in 1997, when we decided to do what was done. And here we are, almost 20-something years later, and there's not an answer to that question. I have heartburn about it, just from the standpoint, there was a vision going forward, and now it's your job, not, I mean, it's not ours. I just can tell you from a citizen's point of view, I have heartburn with it.
I understand.
Then, the Sandown schools are still on the table and be addressed hopefully at the next meeting. The next item is the new budgets that were presented last week. The first one is special education. Does anyone have any questions or concerns about that budget?
I just had a quick question. I had made a note that there was, in what was originally presented, there was an extra 30,000 in that, and I just didn't catch where that, which line that came out of. I just made note of it, and I'm not sure where it was.
You're saying that
So
it's,
I think
that
it-
it's 30 grand, that that's $30,000 too high?
That was what I had written down. Now, I could be wrong on that, so that's why I'm asking.
So we have the 30,000 actually right here on page 10 of the report that was distributed at the time. And it's all under 1,200, 738, 1133.
Hold on, maybe we're a little bit here. So you're right there. Give me one
Oh,
moment.
yeah.
I'm almost there.
New laptop computer.
Replacement
Page
computer.
10, I'm sorry, okay, say it again?
Yeah, highlighted it.
No, highlighted the objects.
So it's those two, so it's there was
Oh,
30,000.
it was here twice, got it.
Yeah,
Okay, and that's in object 738.
correct.
Okay, thank you.
Now, is that reflected in the proposed budget, that decrease here?
Yes, that's, no, that budget is the proposed budget as it was, yeah, as it was presented.
So we should subtract 30,000 from that?
Correct, yep.
Okay. Who's got a calculator? All right, we have a budget, proposed budget of 2,103,308, and we want to subtract 30,000 from that.
Talking,
You need the numbers again, hold on.
2,103,308.
Hold on. 2,103,308.
103,
Mhm.
308,
Yep.
minus 30,000.
So 2,073,308.
Exactly.
What is that? Say that again?
$2,073,308.
Okay.
Motion to accept the special education budget.
As
Mo-
revised.
As revised.
As revised. Is there a second? Okay. Paul? Any more discussions? Mrs. Hammond, did you have a question?
No, no.
Okay. Okay, let's vote. All in favor of the revised budget for special education? Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. The next is student services. Any questions or concerns about that one?
Motion to approve the student services budget.
Is there a second?
A second.
Mr. Muscola? Any discussion? Okay. All in favor of the proposed student service budget? Opposed? Abstentions? The next item is Danville School, Danville Elementary. Any questions on their budget? A motion to accept the Danville School, Elementary School budget as presented?
So moved.
Mr. Paul? Second. Mr. Hughes? Any more discussion, questions, concerns? Okay, all in favor of the Danville School budget as presented? Signify by saying aye, or raise your hand. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. The next is facilities. This is a $921,300 proposed budget. Increase of over 111,000. Any questions or concerns about this one? Yes. Mrs. Hammond.
I just had a question, and I don't know, I think this comes under facilities. It's a CIP item as well regarding at the Atkinson Academy, removing the curving and grade pavement. I know that this is a ongoing project that they've had going at all the schools, and they've removed most of it at this point. I would like to see that removed only because I feel that it's really detrimental to the safety of the students, and I think that you're gonna see in the next few years issues coming up, and they're gonna wanna put some of the curbing back at some of these schools. I see it at the middle school this year, and I hate to see any more of it being removed until we see how it goes. You've got preschoolers, kindergartners, and I, already when you're driving into the middle school without that curbing there, the cars are pulling up to where the grass is, so the kids are walking on the grass, even though it's all painted, but without having that different level. I mean, there's a reason why people put sidewalks in, and it's a real safety concern for me. So I don't know if how anyone else feels about it.
What's the amount they're looking at?
They've got 53,500 on the CIP for that.
Would you like to make a motion to delete that?
I would, but I don't know if it looks like he has.
The only thing I wanna say is for 53,000, it's not just removing curbing. So if you wanna talk to Tom Geary about it maybe, or we can have him in here for next meeting, cause there's a lot of other work in there, so to just strike the 53, you might be killing other things that they were gonna do.
Okay.
The
Alright.
curbing removal is probably, $2,000 versus what this is. So that's what I mean. I don't know the full scope of the project. I just know that it's more than just removing curbing.
Okay.
So if you want, we can probably have Tom come in next time we meet and go over what exactly it is, but,
Just get a definition of it.
Well, yeah,
I'll be frank, I think that as we've had some experience with it in the district and as we've had different perspectives on it, that's being evaluated as part of any ongoing paving projects. And really that was ancillary to the request. That was ancillary to the paving. The paving was the primary project.
Okay.
So the actual repaving of the parking lot or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just a normal cycle of repaving is, and it does read, I'm looking at it now and it does read that way.
Yeah.
It does say,
Right.
it does say remove curbing, grade and pave. Really, it's a paving cycle project.
Okay.
So, and as all these projects are going through, I really think that I don't know, I'd be willing to bet you're probably gonna see more curbing remain.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so leave it as it is.
So leave it, maybe I can talk to Tom or
If we
something.
talk to Tom, I'm sure he's
And
gonna
hopefully
explain.
we
it.
can
Okay.
come back to
Much
this when we
Okay.
do the full budget review.
Yeah, it's not like it's in stone once we approve it.
I believe that they've done it already in Danville. I mean, that's been, curbing, I believe, has been removed, and it's all paved, so it was actually part of the plan, I think, was so that when you do the snow plow removal, that the plows can actually just go down there and not have to worry about getting snow blowers out to do the sidewalk portions.
Right. That was the logic, but it's not safe at all.
I was, what's the feedback from the principals at Danville, and I don't know if it's been done at other schools yet as well.
So it's some irony, if I may, that it's being treated in some cases as a trip hazard as well. So I think now where we're at and how these have worked out, we'll be taking a look at them while everyone's, on the phone walking.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, I see all the kids walking to the high school on Greeno Road, which is a huge safety issue, and many people brought up putting in sidewalks on those roads. And then right next to the school, we're removing the sidewalks. So it's a little contradictory. Is it a safety thing or isn't it? I think it is. Just once the snow is here and the snow is pushed onto that grass, where are the kids gonna walk? Because all the cars gonna be pulling up right alongside that snowbank.
Yes.
So taking out the curb and the sidewalks, was that a determination by the board, or was that facilities, so CIP?
They started
How did
doing
that happen?
like 3 years ago, I think.
Because I wasn't here 3 years ago, I just,
Yeah,
for my own
I wasn't
information.
either, but I think they started doing it like 3 years ago.
I agree with Julie as far as safety as a ex-elementary principal. I will tell you that having parents pull up with a curb is a heck of a lot safer than having the same level, a little kindergarten and first grader get out and almost get clipped. I just think there's some safety issues. Snow be damned. I think you need to have safety first for the kids, not necessarily the ease of taking snow out of a parking lot. Just my 2 cents.
And I can bring all your concerns back to the school board.
Please
I
do.
mean, I will. I have my list, and I'll make sure I mention it.
In my school in Manchester, we redesigned where the faculty parked, and we actually had to do another parking lot. How the buses came in, we redesigned it, so there was a drop-off area and then a bus area, and then staff parking away from the building to a point where during the busiest time of the day, cars went one way, buses went a different way, just so you wouldn't have people crossing each other's paths. Now you had snow and ice, and if you're on the same level, all you need is one kid to slip, fall, and you have a real accident on your hand.
See, at the high school, it's less because they have the
Overhang?
overhang
Yeah.
out there, so you've got columns, but when you go by the pack and down to the middle
Right.
school, I agree with Julie, I've seen
Yep.
cars park up there.
Yep.
So kids can't walk down, the walkways are now impeded at that point too.
Correct.
Maybe some kind of cone structure and stuff that they could put out there, I mean.
It's tough in the wintertime, though, I can tell you, you're already short-staffed, and if you have a custodian who's out there shoveling snow or putting sand down, you end up, administrators gotta go out and put up the cones and then take them in. It ends up being a personnel issue in the wintertime, because everyone's trying to make everything happen. All of a sudden, if you forget, then you have an issue. Sorry.
So here's what I notice. We get new staff in the district, and they all bring their new ideas. And they many times contradict their predecessor. Is there a standard, like we can go to the state, one state agency, Department of Safety, anything?
No, doesn't exist.
I agree with you.
Is there some place we can get more of a standard piece of information versus an opinion of one person, and that's what we're going with? So you're saying no?
I don't know. I wish I had that answer. I wasn't here when they decided to remove the curbing. I don't know how that.
I just
don't
hate to
know.
see, we go through with an action, the next person fills that spot, and they say, oh, well, no. we
That's
gotta-
the way right. So I'm not sure. I'll ask. You know.
I see this often.
Yeah.
The Department of Transportation has, for the municipalities, standards that they have to follow. The problem is the minute you go from a town road like Greenhow and you step on the school district policy, they're in charge. And how they deem it necessary to make changes, if they're
Okay,
approved.
let me back up. How about our insurance company?
There's supposed to be a safety committee on this. I assume.
But wouldn't our insurance company give you recommendations on where you could make improvements, what's a risk? I don't, maybe they have something, but I'd like to get something that gives us some guidance versus some, more than what we have now.
Yeah, and I will share that our risk management provider pool, Primex, is exceptionally good at assisting us with that. And the answer may be, we don't like them because they presented a trip hazard, but the flip side is that we've also found other ways to make soft barriers, right? So that, you like the cones or something, so they have best practices. We turn to them a lot on these things. I think as this work has been done, it's been evaluated on an ongoing basis. So I will bring that back, your safety or facilities. Facilities, so it's.
Safety just meant they're not.
You also gotta look at it from their point of view. The insurance company doesn't care that you have a higher operational cost of bringing somebody in and out carrying cones. That's your cost. They're just looking at what's my liability as Acme Insurance Company.
That's right.
All right, so I guess the consensus is to leave the budget as it's presented for facilities, for facilities. Yes,
I had another issue on the increase of $9,499 for the purchase of a lawn vacuum for the goose problem on the athletic fields. And I just wanted to comment, I had a couple of concerns with this item that they would like to purchase. I know that there is a goose problem. I think that maybe an alternate solution might be looked at, because what's gonna happen, you're still going to have residual on those fields, so there's still that likelihood of bacteria or E. coli that a kid might fall in or step in or get on them. And also, the equipment that you're gonna be using is gonna be sucking all this stuff up, and is that gonna be getting cleaned and sanitized every time they use it? That's my first concern. And I know that other schools, to alleviate this, for an example, they have somebody who's got a couple dogs come out every morning, and they walk their dogs around the field, and the dogs bark, and the geese do not even go onto the field. They pay them something to come out in the months that the geese are out there, and so there's no poop on the field to begin with. Just some kind of look at some different alternatives for fixing this problem besides just this. And my other issue is the facilities people, I'm assuming already are busy enough prepping the fields and doing everything else. I don't understand how all of a sudden they're gonna have time to spend a few hours walking around with like a lawnmower picking this all up.
It's an attachment that goes on the lawnmower, so they essentially would still be mowing the lawn.
Okay,
You see what I mean? Like, it's something that goes on to the.
so it's
the
not
thing.
a separate,
Right, it's not a whole new ride-on machine that only does goose poop, that's not what it does.
okay.
But I understand how it could be viewed that way, because it is pretty expensive, but it is just an attachment.
Okay.
If I could just, I guess, amplify your point from, I have seen, I used to work at a company where we had a major problem with geese at a pond behind it, and they got a dog who became sort of like the mascot, and the dog was great about keeping the geese away and was a great addition, so.
So you're
so that-
suggesting we get a dog?
I'm thinking maybe a good dog.
I'm thinking a lot of people
You could
around
get
here
5
have dogs
for
that,
$9,000.
that for a small fee, I'm
Get
sure
a
they'd
rescue
be
job
happy
cheap,
to.
rescue jobs cheaper, rescue dogs.
Just to.
Till you get the bill for the kennel.
I actually saw it work well. And people at the work really enjoyed that. So
There you go.
just to amplify it.
Perfect.
You'd probably have more dogs on the field if people didn't read the signs that say no dogs in the field. But
Oh.
if we had geese that read that, we should put signs up that say.
Keep the geese.
So what type of covering would you put on the dog? Since there's no dogs, this would be it's not a.
Dog
line-
diaper?
You're just being,
I think he wants to
put some
dress
comic
him.
relief to this. Talking goose
A
poop.
cat, dressing as a cat.
All right,
$10,000 in goose poop.
I agree with you, Julie. It's just,
are you proposing to remove the 9,000?
Yes, I am.
Is there, you leave anything for the dog adoption?
Oh, we need to put something aside for hiring someone to
Stipend
walk,
for-
a
for
stipend for someone to walk their dog in the morning and take it around the school for a couple hours.
Don't let us into a detention pool.
So the only other thing I would say is that maybe additional logistics that are a little bit different because kids are out there using the athletic fields, so that having a dog just running like we used to have behind there may or may not be quite
Just
so good. So
the way they utilize it at their school is they have the dogs out there early in the morning when the geese are there. So it's not running around during the day. Yeah.
All right, well, you wanna put that as a motion?
Sure. I guess I would propose to remove item number 100.2630.733.12.33.4.00000 new equipment grounds in the amount of $9,499 for purchase of a lawn vacuum. And I would make a motion to remove that item from the proposed budget.
Is there a second? Any more discussion? Okay, let's vote. All in favor of this? Five in favor. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Opposed? 2. Abstentions? Okay, motion carried. All right, so then, going to the main question, the proposed budget is, started out at $921,300. And we need to subtract $94.99 from that.
So it would be 911,801.
Okay, is there a motion to accept the amended budget for facilities of $911,801?
I would say we don't have to vote on that. It's, since we just voted to reduce it, that's what it comes out
Reduce
to
it,
be.
but we have to prove the revised number,
Okay.
okay? So,
What was the final number again?
911,801.
911,801,
Right, thanks.
okay? Because we're just responding to the adjustment.
We haven't actually approved the facilities budget.
That's correct.
I'll make a motion to approve the facilities budget
As amended?
as amended.
Is there a second? No?
But,
What? You,
discussion, sorry.
well, let's get a second first, and then
Yep.
we'll go to discussion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, there's a second. Yes, Mrs. Hammond?
I just wanted to just discuss a little further and get other input on the item regarding the snow plowing for 28,000 for renting this loader at the main campus. I'm not in the snow plowing business, so I'm not really familiar, but I know that, you know, the snow amounts that we get each year can increase and decrease, and I just wanted to see if the rest of the board feels like this is a good investment, or if maybe we're better off just continuing how we have typically done it, where we're hiring someone to come in and do this.
Yes.
Didn't Mr. Geary tell us that we pay like a flat fee for them to come to our site, whether we get a lot or a little snow? Is that correct?
Yes.
No? I'm asking.
I thought that's how I understood it.
That's what I thought he said. So to your point, if that's accurate, whether we get a lot or a little, we're gonna pay some contractor to park their equipment on our property and do that job.
Right.
Kinda like
I'm
what-
not under the impression that it was that way, so I'm not, so,
No.
I don't know. I mean, that kind of makes a difference.
So is the question that vehicle would be here and that price was fixed for the year, or that our current service is fixed for the year?
The current service.
No, that's in a per.
No, that's not fixed.
No.
The
That
vehicle
isn't.
rental is.
Right.
That's over the course of the months we have that's ours.
Right,
is
this is fixed, but currently, what we have in place
Is not fixed.
is not fixed.
So that loader proposal would also allow the snow to be pushed, saving wear and tear on our current vehicles. Last year's expenditure showing, I believe, is 21,000, almost 22,000, budgeted for 11, and there was an additional bill that came in after that. So it was over 30 for snow removal, having the outside firm come in and, you know, remove it and put it elsewhere on the campus.
So what's the total then, like 31 something?
In
So we're gonna spend 28 guaranteed, plus you're gonna have a cost of doing normal snow removal. So I think right there is gonna be, show that it's more, because we're actually guaranteeing that we're gonna spend at least 28 of that just renting it.
Yep.
And I believe if he did say that it was gonna be one of our employees that would be operating that,
Yes.
And he's trying
I would
to
also,
use,
I mean, there brings up a lot of stuff with that, is experience with the equipment. I mean, this is a big piece of equipment. It was commented that it would be done during the day, so they wouldn't have to do it all on weekends. I mean, the logistics of it, we were talking just a minute ago, safety issues here. I mean, you're gonna have a big front end loader moving around this parking lot with kids,
He
students.
did not say it was gonna be
Cars
done during the
everywhere.
day. He definitely didn't.
No,
said
I know
it was
he
gonna be
didn't, but
done
these are the-
before then.
Pardon?
It was gonna be done before school even opened. He's gonna use them on the weekends to open up everything, because he's not gonna do that with people here. They're not gonna be running that thing with people here unless like they absolutely have to, which I really doubt is gonna happen.
He did make a comment about being able to do it not just on the weekends, though.
Right.
He did make
No,
that.
no, I get that, but it's gonna be before school opens. They're gonna be clearing everything out of the way so the buses can get in. I mean, that's the point of this thing, so they don't have to wait on somebody else to do it.
I was under the impression too, that this, wasn't this, when you were saying as the regular trucks plow things around to open the spaces, and then you have your piles, this was going to remove it, to move it to the back field.
He's gonna be pushing it to the backfield.
Right, this is what, yeah, that's what I'm
Yeah.
trying to get at is,
They all work together. I mean, you guys, everybody's seen it, right?
Right.
The plow
Oh, yeah.
trucks plow
Oh, yeah.
big pile of snow as the load is
Right.
bringing it out back. That's how I see it
right,
happening.
me too, if the driver, if it's a light snowfall, probably at 5 o'clock in the morning before anybody gets to the schools, he'll start chipping away at it, and when the, cars start coming in, you stop.
Right.
Yeah.
yeah, he meant, and if I remember correctly, he mentioned that there was going to be no increase in full-time equivalents to do this work.
Correct.
And that the person who would be doing it was already trained on heavy equipment.
Yep.
That's what I heard too.
And they were gonna go over it with him anyways.
Yes.
So Jeff, excuse me, you were saying there was, back to what Sean was asking, so it was around at 31,000 this past year?
Mhm.
Is what you were saying? So are you asking about increasing it to have a bottom line, or are you just leaving it at?
This is just to get a piece of equipment that's going to be sitting there, that's just taking it from the front to the back. So it would be,
Right.
what was the cost that we had to pay for a contractor to take it to the back? What was that cost?
We spent what we spent, not just to pull it off the banks and bring it to the back. We spent what we spent because we have equipment downtime as well. And the idea is that with this, bringing this equipment in, which is appropriately sized for the size parking lots that we have, we're gonna have less wear and tear and less, we can't really push snow with the vehicles that we have in the event of a big storm.
Right.
And this would help alleviate that burden, because we do run into a lot of downtime when you have the vehicles taxed, overworked, and all of that. So I think this is something that, looking at what happened last year, how do we prevent it, how do we plan for it, put it out there, there it is.
At the same time, I'd like to see what, you don't have, 3 years ago when it was actually, we had a good winter.
Mhm.
Or when I say good, a bad winter for people who don't like snow. With the last 2 winters were mild.
Right.
So, that's what I'm looking at, and those numbers aren't enough for a bad winter.
Right.
Okay. Any other discussions on this issue? And there was a motion to accept the budget as amended, and it's seconded, so we'll vote. All in favor of the facilities budget as amended? Opposed? Abstentions? Okay.
Are you going to move forward with the 28,000 on that? To reduce it?
Not at this time.
Okay. We already discussed the interventionist costs, so move on to other business. Mr. Viscola had an item.
So at our next meeting, we're going to see a summary we're gonna see a budget presented to us for the first time, which is a summary of all this stuff. And I'm gonna tell you, I find it a little bit challenging sometimes when I'm watching these individual presentations and I see a number that's decreased because we moved it somewhere else. And so when I look at those summary pages to see is the overall budget for that school or that department up or down, whatever the result is, and it's because it's moved, and I'm like, oh, so tonight we had some great ones, they only went up maybe 1%. But they shifted a lot of the stuff somewhere else. So it makes it confusing to be able to say, is it really down? Because you still have all the same expenses, you just spread them in different piles. So I'm curious to see this final budget, because as we talk about all this stuff of these small pieces, there's just no way we can accept everything that's been in front of us. I mean, the budget will be through the roof.
Enormous.
So while we're discussing great topics about do we remove 30,000 here, and look, we're going to be removing a lot more than 30,000 when we get that budget next week.
Exactly, that was my point on why, doing this, all great topics of, little things of moving it, but when you turn around and you look at, just that last week was 1.16 million.
Exactly. So
And we
we
just
can be
talked-
discussing this $50,000, but I think next week we could be discussing $1 million,
Correct.
whatever it is.
On that point, can I make a comment? I don't want to interrupt if you haven't finished.
I'm done.
your letter. Okay. I've been thinking about some of the same sorts of things, and I am in no way wedded to this kind of concept, but in one of my prior incarnations, work life, I did some of these kinds of things in a very different setting. And so I was thinking about how do we go through and prioritize, because what I have seen historically, not in the depths of the detail that this good committee is working so hard on, but sort of at the broader, I'm a person out there kind of thing, is we have kind of let's just cut some percentage that kind of comes out over here, which I understand why that's coming, and then the response is, well, if we cut that percentage, then we're going to have to gut something that's vital to us, athletics or something that would have to be gutted. And to me, there needs to be a process of how do you go through and prioritize. So I've been giving it a little bit of thought. Like I said, I'm not completely, we're actually at all wedded to it, but I wanted to throw it out to the committee. I made some copies, and I'll give it to you. I'll try to describe it for the folks who are watching it, and just sort of see if any of this makes sense to people. If not, like I said, I'm not wedded to it, but I just, based on things that I have seen, have some success. And the idea would be a process like this applied across all of the functional areas, basically. Yeah, I probably had too many. I wasn't sure how many to put, so I just did a whole bunch extra. So the idea was everybody would sort of use something along this lines as a metric. So these are just a sample of what I sent out or handed out. So there's one piece that's sort of like the strategic drivers that you would assign. And in this particular case, I proposed ideas around health and safety as a bucket, as a driver, achievement, academic, infrastructure things, culture, climate. Some of these could be morphed, as I say. Typically, those are driven off of your strategic plan that was still in process. So I tried to kind of make some of this align with what's developing. And then there's a prioritization that gets assigned in this concept, where it kind of goes from 1 to 4, 1 being the critical. It's basically you don't have a choice. We have to transport these kids, for example. Or there's a legal or regulatory requirement. So these things, if they're assigned that and we believe that to be true, we take it off the plate. We don't have to talk about it, and it's just clear and in that bucket. Urgent, if we don't do it this year, it's going to be in that critical bucket next year. Prudent, which is, it's smart to do it. and it's important if we want to achieve the objectives that we say we want to achieve. And then there's the nice to have. And in my example, I used, for example, planting trees at the high school as a proposal for that. Number 4, it would be great to do. It adds to culture and climate, but maybe we should seek funding opportunities outside of the taxpayer money, such as grants, private-public partnerships, senior gifts, fundraising, other ideas that maybe people could be creative with. So it's just sort of a way of saying, look, all these pieces over here, we would love to be able to do something with, maybe we can't, but let's have a conversation about this other bucket of stuff. So I throw it out to the good committee. You guys have been through this process on the municipal side before. I haven't, but there's just some ideas.
Are you proposing that we use a template like this and go through each item?
I'm proposing that the budget owners take a look at their budgets, and because they know it best. I'm not going to know how to assign that. But I think there's some granularity that provides to them of,
So, let me just, because I mentioned this to Jeff before the meeting. I'm gonna tell you, next year, when we go through this budget process, I'd like, before we ask all these administrators to come forward with their budgets, give them a little bit of leeway of how we're feeling, strong on the dollar, weak on the dollar, because to what you just said, I don't know if I should be cutting crayons or pencils. I don't know.
that's right.
And so when I see a budget come in at a 38% increase, alls I know is 38 is going to be a hard sell to the voters. So come in with a sharper pencil. Don't make me do the cutting. I don't know what's important to your chart. Have them do it. So, yeah, I think, but this would have to be for next year. You can't go back now. We don't have the time.
I floated it out there in early days, but.
So I think next year, the better recipe is to do maybe something like this, have them prioritize, and then give them a little more guidance like, guys, if we all come in with something in double-digit increases, it's going to be a very hard pill to swallow. And that way, we're not forced to do, I hate to say this, blind cutting.
Draconian, blind, yeah.
Like I said, I don't know, do I cut crayons or pencils? I don't know what's more important.
I think that's a better approach. Yes.
Jeff, just for my own information, was there any guidance given from superintendent or any board recommendation on what to present to us? I guess that's what I wanted. Because I've been in that chair, and I've seen I remember at the middle school, one of the athletic budgets, and, I get the same thing for 3 years in a row in all line items, but that wasn't decided by the budget committee. That was decided between the superintendent and the business administrator. So I hear what everybody's saying about, crayons or pencils, but the reality is, when they sit down and they come to the board and they say, well, here's what money we need to move because we just had a catastrophic problem with a furnace go down. So that's when you are in a pickle.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess my question is, what is the guidance that was given to them before they presented to us?
Mm-hmm.
Is it a chart like Eileen's talking about, or they just said, bring forth whatever?
I think it's
Wish list and everything.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit of both. I can't speak to what conversations transpire between the superintendent and the budget owners. I know that there was a bit more attention paid to that process this year.
Mhm.
So, but I really can't, I'm not privy to every discussion that he may have with each individual owner. And typically, if you have a proposal, middle school had a large proposal for involving, I guess, flex furniture, flexible
Yep.
type furniture. That's a discussion that's not just a dollars and cents budget discussion. That's an educational
Does it have merit and?
learning environment discussion. That certainly, those discussions I'm sure have occurred, and I don't know. And perhaps in that instance, perhaps that proposal was $160,000, and that discussion may have been, look, it's a directive for creating and fostering those learning environments that we've had. let's break it up and make it happen over a number of years. So I can't speak to every, every scenario, every situation that comes up, but, to what those discussions have been. That'd be a question you'd have to ask him.
I'm curious because I've been on both sides of the fence now, and one of the things I used to, when Bucky Tardiff was here, one of the things that we would do is sit down beginning of the year in September and just hash out, what do you really need?
Right.
We didn't look at percentages or anything like that. And then the next step was me meeting with Mr. McDonald, not Dr. McDonald, and say, these are the things we need in the next 3 years. How do you want us to present it to this budget committee? I just feel as though there's a detachment of the tax impact on all of our towns, and where do we go from here? Are we going to say a 1% increase? Are we saying 1% decrease? Because that's our job, in my opinion. It's not the crayons and pencils. It's to meet with that board and say, this is how we feel right now. Should it be decreased? Because then it ends up going on your plate if the voters vote on that. Or if they say no and it goes to default and there's an expenditure above this past year's budget. So I really have a concern about that disconnect. I just want to share that.
I would concur with that.
Any other business? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jim?
Sir?
I'm 5 minutes late.
Do you